Chapter 2344, Flying Ship vs. Sunset King. White Autumn and the others were stunned when they saw the 6 guardian puppets. 6 combat puppets. Did he bring Zero Wing's entire armory with him? Lin Ye stared, astonished, at Shifeng after witnessing the 6 guardian puppets, which were as tall as buildings. Combat puppets weren't as rare as they once had been, and many superpowers had a few of their own at this stage of the game. Giant's Heart was no exception. However, due to how few the guild had, every one of them was treated as a part of the guild's foundation and mustn't be used casually. Even White Autumn, one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders, had to gain the guild leader's permission before he could mobilize a guardian puppet. And yet Shifeng had pulled 6 of them from his bag as if they were common tools. The unexpected development rendered White Autumn speechless. White Autumn had already been shocked that Shifeng was allowed to carry a flying ship on him. Yet now he found out that the swordsman also had 6 combat puppets. If he hadn't taken the initiative to invite Shifeng to assist on his quest and bring the man to the sea god's realm, he would have suspected that Shifeng had actually come to declare war on the otherworld. Bronze-ranked combat puppets possessed peak Tier 3 power, and under an expert player's control, they could easily surpass the combat power of Tier 3 summoned creatures and war weapons. This was why the various superpowers were so careful with their combat puppets. Destroying a guild town would be child's play if one mobilized 6 bronze combat puppets at once. Combined with a flying ship, even destroying a guild city might be possible. We don't have much time left. Let's hurry, Shifeng said, watching the spreading mist and increasing number of undying spirits. He hadn't planned to reveal the guardian puppets initially. They were a part of Zero Wing's foundation after all, and they would lose durability in combat. Moreover, the materials needed to repair them weren't easy to produce. However, this was an extraordinary situation, and the Sunset King was a mythic-ranked mutant. This was the first time he had ever even heard of such a monster. The last mutant he had killed in White River City had only been a High Lord, yet its loot had been priceless, especially the Blade Saint legacy. At mythic rank, the Sunset King's loot would be just as astonishing. Its total value might even rival that of the Sea God's blessing. However, the Sunset King wouldn't be easy to kill. Aside from the increasing number of undying spirits, the mutant itself wasn't a being current players could afford to provoke. If the city's level 180 Tier 4 magistrate weren't taking it, the Sunset King would have already transformed the city into ruins. After factoring in the swarm of undying spirits, it would be impossible to get the Crimson Dragon flying ship close to the Sunset King. Hence, Shifeng had to rely on the guardian puppet's strength. Blue, your group will pilot these guardian puppets and protect the flying ship with me. Lin Ye, your group will help Elder Yifeng control the flying ship, White Autumn said. He knew that time was of the essence right now. Everyone else, use everything you've got to help from the side. I will ensure that you're all rewarded appropriately as long as we succeed. Following which, White Autumn and 5 peak experts entered the guardian puppets' cockpits. Meanwhile, Lin Ye's group boarded the Crimson Dragon flying ship with Shifeng. Naturally, Lake Mountain City's players soon noticed the flying ship and combat puppets. The steel giants were difficult to ignore. The constructs dwarfed both the players and the undying spirits. The level 100+ undying spirits, which current players had no hope against, were like children before the guardian puppets. White Autumn and Giant's Heart's peak experts perfectly displayed the colossal construct's strength, sending groups of undying spirits flying with a single slap. Effortlessly, the 6 guardian puppets opened a path through the swarm of undying spirits, preventing the summoned monsters from getting between the Crimson Dragon flying ship and the Sunset King. A flying ship? Crap. How is this fair? When the various major powers and adventurer teams saw the guardian puppets and Crimson Dragon flying ship, they felt as if they were using guns and swords in this battle, while Zero Wing and Giant's Heart used fighter jets and tanks. The two sides' firepower was on entirely different levels. White Autumn and the other guardian puppet pilots couldn't help but agree with that thought. When fighting alone, the guardian puppet didn't seem particularly powerful, but when 6 fought together, they made up for each other's weaknesses, doubling their combat power. Now, they were even confident of taking down a level 100 mythic monster, much less a few level 100 Grand Lords. Before the watching players could overcome their shock from seeing the guardian puppets, the Crimson Dragon flying ship's main cannons began to gather mana. Everyone within 2,000 yards of the flying ship felt the mana density around them sharply decrease. The instant Westland used a Tier 4 skill to push the Sunset King back, the magic elven cannon fired a beam of divine light at the mythic mutant. The Sunset King had extraordinary movement speed and reaction speed. Normally, even ballistas and gnome cannons would struggle to land a hit. However, less than 300 yards separated the Sunset King and the Crimson Dragon flying ship, and even if the mythic mutant tried, it couldn't dodge the attacks in time. Thus, the Sunset King was forced to block the attack with its scythe. Boom! The instant the beam attack smashed into the scythe, space around the impact ruptured. The Sunset King simply didn't have enough strength to resist the magic elven cannons, and as a result, the beam of divine light devoured the mythic mutant power. The Sunset King rapidly lost HP while bathed in the divine light. By the time the attack ended, the Sunset King, whom the magistrate hadn't been able to injure, was visibly hurt. Cracks spread across the mutant's body, and it had lost over 20 million HP. While the Sunset King slowly healed its injuries, it would command far less combat power. A flying ship possesses such destructive power? Linya stared at the injured Sunset King with wide eyes. Not even a Tier 4 Heavenly Knight had been able to damage the Sunset King's body, yet the Crimson Dragon had achieved the feat with a single attack. It was simply unbelievable. What Linya didn't know was that the Crimson Dragon flying ship was powered by a bronze engine. Its overall DPS might not be a match for an actual bronze flying ship, but its main cannon had peak Tier 4 power. Not even Westland could afford to take a direct hit from the magic elven cannon. The boss is coming. Activate the magic shield and mana field. All mana pulse cannons attack with everything you've got. Shi Feng commanded as the Sunset King turned his glare toward the Crimson Dragon flying ship. The mythic mutant made its move as soon as Shi Feng finished giving orders. The Sunset King appeared before the flying ship in the blink of an eye and swung its scythe, sending a crimson arc slicing at the vessel. Fortunately, the flying ship's magic shield and mana field snapped up before the Sunset King had attacked. As a result, the flying ship avoided taking any hull damage. However, the attack had depleted the magic shield's energy reserve by over 6 million points. After blocking the Sunset King's attack, the flying ship's mana pulse cannons activated, one after another, firing a black and white beam that struck the mythic mutant. Each one of the beams shaved off a sizable chunk of the Sunset King's HP, and the spectating players were stunned by the horrific, spectacular explosions that ensued. After witnessing the Crimson Dragon flying ship's performance, everyone gained a newfound appreciation for flying ships. None of them had ever thought that a flying ship could go toe-to-toe with a monster as powerful as the Sunset King. With Westland pinning down the mutant and the Crimson Dragon flying ship's firepower devouring its HP, the Sunset King was rendered powerless. It could only watch as it continued to lose HP. Moreover, due to the 6 guardian puppets, the tens of thousands of Undying couldn't even reach the flying ship. 60%, 30%, 10%. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. As the Sunset King's HP continued to plummet, the mythic mutant frenzied. In turn, the Crimson Dragon flying ship steadily lost durability. They were lucky that Westland had shown up. Without him to tank the mythic mutant, the Crimson Dragon flying ship would have lost durability at a much faster rate. When the Sunset King's HP fell to 5%, it turned and fled, but Westland refused to allow it. The magistrate immediately activated Lake Mountain City's defensive magic array, sealing off the city. The Sunset King couldn't escape the city until it destroyed the magic barrier. Die. When Shi Feng saw how little HP the mythic mutant had left, he activated the magic elven cannon once more. Although the Sunset King tried desperately to defend itself, the beam of divine light cut through its HP until it eventually hit zero. The mutant's body then disappeared, returning to the void. Chapter 2345. Holy Chant. As the Sunset King's body vanished into the void, a bright glow enveloped Shi Feng and his companions. He reached level 103 and was more than halfway to the next level. Linya and the others manning the flying ship's mana pulse cannons instantly leveled from 98 to 100. The Sunset King had awarded many times more EXP than ordinary level 100 mythic monsters. It left Linya and the others dazed for a moment. Meanwhile, the bloody mist that had saturated Lake Mountain City began to gather toward the disappearing Sunset King. After 3 seconds, a resplendent crimson gem formed within the mist, attracting everyone's attention instantly. The mutated heart. Even without inspecting the gem, everyone knew it was the mutated heart. After all, the crystal contained tremendous energy, even more than 7 luminaries crystals. While it hovered in the air, the crimson gem radiated such powerful waves of energy that space around it distorted as if it couldn't endure the energy. The energy within the crimson gem had no place on this plane of existence. Suddenly, a ray of holy light descended from the sky, and every player in the city heard a divine chant. As if the heavens were celebrating the Sunset King's death, over 100 globes of light fell from the sky, landing around the mutated heart. Their brilliant light illuminated all of Lake Mountain City. Every one of these treasures radiated incredible auras, and so close together their auras amplified each other. Bathing in the combined auras and warm light, ordinary players struggled to approach the items. Loot. After a few seconds, someone broke the silence. As if the word had been the spark to ignite a powder keg, every player surged toward the glowing orbs like a crowd of lunatics. The city's players seemed to have forgotten about Giant's Heart's members, the guardian puppets and the crimson dragon flying ship. All of you charge. Those treasures are ours. Kill whoever tries to get in your way. I'll ensure that whoever claims an item is promoted by 1 rank within the guild. I'll even award bonus GCPs depending on the item's rarity. Lake Mountain City's various major powers promptly ordered their guild members to surround the Sunset King's loot. Although there were quite a few Giant's Heart members nearby, no one paid them any mind. With so much precious treasure before them, all else was secondary. Improving one's strength was the key to success in God's domain. Even if the superpower demanded that they hand over the treasures they had claimed later, how would Giant's Heart's players know what treasures they had taken? The guild would be quite impressive if it even knew how many items had dropped. All these powers would have to do is hand over some of the less valuable items, and Giant's Heart wouldn't be able to do anything about it. While the various major powers made their move, they bombarded the area with attacks to prevent others from getting to the loot first. These people have lost their minds. Linya was furious as she watched the various major powers members swarm the loot area like locusts. She had never thought they'd be so desperate or shameless. Some major powers even began to attack the area with their war weapons. Even with a flying ship, it would take some time to clear out these pests, and by the time the loot area was clear, the surrounding players would have taken what they wanted. They were talking about several 100,000 players. Even if Giant's Heart had 6 guardian puppets and several thousand members present, it couldn't stop all of these players. I'll loot the items. You just need to keep players out of the area, Shifeng calmly told Linya. Honestly though, he was just trying to suppress the elation and shock in his heart. A holy chant. If the super guilds from his previous life had known about this, they would have done everything in their power to secure these items. He wouldn't even be surprised if they flattened Lake Mountain City for the sake of the Sunset King's loot. By now, every player in God's domain was familiar with the appearance of loot, but most didn't know that there were different ranks of this phenomenon. The most common was the glow that enveloped dropped items. After that was a dragon's roar that heralded the item's arrival, and then there was the holy chant. The strongest phenomena he had experienced in the past had been the dragon's roar. He had only ever heard of the holy chant announcing the loot's arrival. A holy chant normally only preceded loot from Tier 5 superior demon kings, Tier 5 saints and Tier 5 adult dragons. These bosses had already taken half a step into the realm of gods. Every one of these bosses ruled an area in God's domain. Ordinary superpowers had no chance of contending with such powerful existences. Usually, several superpowers would have to work together to take one down. Hence, Shifeng had been taken aback when he heard the holy chant as the Sunset King's loot had dropped. He had expected a mythic mutant's loot to be extraordinary, but he hadn't thought it would be this incredible. If the various superpowers of his previous life had known about this, they would have nurtured every mutant they could find to mythic rank before slaughtering them. When Linya watched Shifeng vault from the pilot's seat, she was at a loss. Hundreds of cannons and ballistas continued to bombard the loot area. Not even a guardian puppet would last long against so many war weapons. How exactly did that swordsman intend to get to the items in such a situation? Even if Shifeng had invulnerability skills, the dropped items were scattered across a vast area. He wouldn't be able to accomplish anything significant with how short invulnerability skills durations were. On the off chance that he miscalculated his timing or spent too much time gathering the loot, he'd lose his life and the items he'd collected. However, before she could try to dissuade the man, Shifeng had already jumped from the Crimson Dragon flying ship directly into the loot area. Crazy bastard. The sight stupefied Linya. Everyone else had noticed Shifeng jump from the flying ship as well. Is that guy stupid? He's trying to collect the loot in such a situation? He should have an invulnerability skill. Damn it. Why don't I have one as well? I could have gone down there and stolen a dozen items myself. The crowd watched Shifeng in envy and admiration. With a dozen of the 100 or so items on the ground, one could make a killing. So many major powers were trying to get to those items right now, and each would be fortunate enough to obtain 5 or 6 items at most. However, Shifeng hadn't activated an invulnerability skill when he hit the ground as everyone had expected. Rather, he replaced the Abyssal Blade with the Twilight Blade and summoned 8 doppelgangers, each with 85% of Shifeng's basic attributes. What is he trying to do? White Autumn, who commanded Giant's Heart's members some distance away, was confused as he watched the swordsman. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Some doppelgangers could use their players' skills and spells, but none of the doppelgangers in God's domain could pick up items. Only the player's main body could do so. So, what was the point in summoning a bunch of doppelgangers in this situation? When they saw what happened next, however, everyone's eyes nearly fell from their sockets. As soon as the 8 doppelgangers appeared, they charged toward the hundreds of approaching cannonballs and ballista arrows. The 8 clones easily blocked the incoming projectiles, which were powerful enough to damage Grand Lord-ranked monsters. Meanwhile, Shifeng strolled through the area as if it were his backyard, casually collecting the scattered loot. 1 item. 3 items. 9 items. Chapter 2346. Oppressing all sides as Shifeng started collecting one dropped item after another, silence fell over the entire city. How is something like this even possible? Crap. Is he even human? Everyone felt their worldview crumble as they watched. At this stage of the game, practically everyone had a healthy fear of war weapons. They could kill players in one hit after all. War weapons could also cause significant damage to high-ranked monsters. Without invulnerability skills, players had no way to stand up against war weapons. Relying on his own strength, Shifeng successfully blocked every incoming cannonball and ballista arrow. Even his doppelgangers effortlessly deflected the hundreds of war weapon attacks. He was simply inhuman. The various major powers members watched as Shifeng steadily collected the loot with bloodshot eyes. Every one of the Sunset King's items radiated an incredibly powerful aura. In God's domain, such auras were proof of an item's rarity and value. Even from so far away, they could see the epic glow effect shining among the Sunset King's loot, and a few items radiated a strange light and a faint trace of divine might. Kill him. Those items are mine. Use Tier 4 magic scrolls. I refuse to believe he can stop those. The various major powers' upper echelons nearly spat blood as they watched Shifeng storing the Sunset King's loot in his bag. Had Shifeng used an invulnerability skill to stop their attacks, they would have accepted their fate, but he blocked their attacks with his doppelgangers. With doppelganger skill's average duration, Shifeng would have more than enough time to collect all of the loot before his doppelgangers disappeared. If that happened, none of them would get anything from this inferior legendary event. A few of the major powers experts immediately retrieved the Tier 4 magic scrolls they had been saving and activated them against the swordsman. Tier 4 spell Heavenly Thunder. Tier 4 spell Dark Domain of Arrows. Tier 4 Hurricane Howl. Have these people gone insane? They're actually using Tier 4 magic scrolls against him. Linya felt her scalp tingle as she watched the 3 Tier 4 spells approach Shifeng. At this stage of the game, Tier 4 magic scrolls were considered a part of a guild's foundation. Every one was worth as much as an ordinary epic item. Tier 4 spells could do even more damage than gnome cannons and large ballistas, and not just because they commanded greater raw power. Players had full control of these spells. They could manipulate the spell's trajectories and implement combat techniques as they cast them. Blocking a single Tier 4 spell was impossible for current players, much less 3. Suddenly, a massive lightning bolt struck down on Shifeng with enough speed to break the sound barrier. At the same time, 12 dark arrows appeared around the swordsman, each with enough power to rival a mythic monster's attacks. Lastly, a gigantic tornado blotted out the sky as it rolled down toward Shifeng. These 3 spells sealed off any path of escape for Shifeng, and watching them move toward the swordsman was like watching Armageddon begin. The watching players felt their hearts skip a beat. The 3 Tier 4 spells' devastating power was stifling. How vicious. That guy's dead for sure now. Not even a mythic monster could take those spells without suffering severe injuries. The general populace hadn't expected Lake Mountain City's various major powers to be so vicious and decisive. Not even superpowers would casually waste Tier 4 magic scrolls on a single player. Death awaits any who oppose us. Let's see how you intend to block these attacks. The various major powers eagerly watched the Tier 4 spells assault Shifeng, waiting for the moment the swordsman died and dropped all of the items he had claimed thus far. However, as everyone expected the Tier 4 spells to devour Shifeng, the swordsman's aura exploded, and a strange black energy enveloped his body. Power of darkness. Scram. Shifeng bellowed as he brandished Killing Ray. Secret technique Lightning Flash. Sword lights immediately appeared around him, cutting down the incoming streams of mana. The lightning bolt and dark arrows scattered, and he sliced the descending tornado cleanly in 2, dissipating the violent wind. Silence. As if time had frozen, silence filled Lake Mountain City. The city's independent players, the various major powers members, even Giant's Hearts members stared, dumbfounded. Those 3 Tier 4 spells would have even injured a mythic monster, yet Shifeng had countered all 3 with a single swing of his sword. How is this possible? The upper echelons from the 3 major powers that had used the Tier 4 magic scrolls were frozen in shock. They had originally saved the Tier 4 magic scrolls as trump cards to use against mythic monsters, yet Shifeng had stopped all 3 effortlessly. He hadn't even lost a single HP, much less been injured. So strong. Is this the true power of a Tier 3 class? Linya felt overwhelmed as she watched Shifeng. She had seen the strength of a Tier 3 class when Shifeng had fought the 2 rock giants outside the temple, but she hadn't realized that a Tier 3 class was powerful enough to nullify Tier 4 spells. With such strength, none of God's domain's superpowers could touch Shifeng. He was on an entirely different level compared to Tier 2 players. Before a Tier 3 player, a Tier 2 player was no more than an infant learning how to walk. Thank goodness. I'm so glad I didn't pick a fight with him. I'd be doomed. Silent Rain inwardly celebrated after seeing Shifeng emerged from the Tier 4 spell bombardment unscathed. Silent Rain had considered plotting a way to steal the Crimson Dragon flying ship, but after this performance he knew that not even a superpower's main army could take that swordsman down. Warblood and Starlin are truly unlucky to have provoked such an individual. White Autumn couldn't help but pity the 2 organizations. Warblood and Starlink would have already found Zero Wing to be an incredibly challenging opponent with its Guardian Puppets and Crimson Dragon flying ship, but with a player like Yifeng to protect the guild as well, Zero Wing was essentially a natural disaster for the 2 organizations. After countering the 3 Tier 4 spells, Shifeng glanced at the approaching players. These players, who still intended to fight for the Sunset King's loot, halted their steps immediately. Even the various major powers leading the charge stopped, quietly watching Shifeng. None of them dared to take even half a step closer, afraid of attracting the swordsman's attention. They'd be gambling their lives if they tried to snatch the items from such a monstrous being. Even if they got their hands on one of the dropped items, they wouldn't be able to escape with it. They'd just become a target for Shifeng to practice his swordsmanship. Seeing these players abandon their contest for the Sunset King's loot, Shifeng turned around and resumed his work. Everyone merely watched as he quietly gathered the remaining items. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Who is that guy? Isn't he a little too strong? He actually deterred an entire city of players by himself. I know, right? Not even the Sea God's Realm's #1 player, Scarlet Hand, would be a match for him. The players in the vicinity began to admire Shifeng. They were also incredibly curious about his identity. As for the Sunset King's loot, none of them dared object to the situation anymore. Once Shifeng had collected the dropped items, he quickly approached White Autumn, handing over the mutated heart. If possible, he wanted to leave Lake Mountain City as soon as he could. He planned to return to White River City immediately. Only there would he be safe enough to appraise the Sunset King's loot. In return for the mutated heart, White Autumn gave Shifeng a whopping 10 ocean barrier stones. Shifeng then retrieved a return scroll and activated it, transforming into a streak of light and leaving the sea god's realm. Chapter 2347 Extraordinary Loot. White River City's business district was full of advanced carriages and a variety of mounts. Meanwhile, the candlelight trading firm loomed over the street like a giant. A long line of players stood before the shop's entrance. Aside from those looking to purchase Candlelight's products, many were lifestyle players, seeking to improve themselves. They were there to take the Candlelight's recruitment test, hoping they'd be accepted into this sacred land for lifestyle players to become a respectable master lifestyle player eventually. A sea of players filled the shop itself, crowding around every counter in the firm and fighting desperately to purchase items. First-time visitors to the Candlelight trading firm were stunned by the scene. Isn't this just a shop? Why are so many people here? A level 96 female druid with a strong life aura muttered, surprised by the players around her. What is this shop selling? That's not what we're here to find out. Our main goal is to investigate the various kingdoms' alchemical standards. The sooner we finish our investigation, the sooner we can employ our moon god's realm's advantages, a male guardian knight who radiated a similar aura said. I guess you're right. The main continent's alchemy standards are far inferior to our world's. Once we verify the potions these people are selling, we can establish ourselves across the continent through our alchemy techniques. The female druid agreed, nodding. She then ignored the commotion on the first floor and headed up the stairs to the second. While the female druid and male guardian knight moved to the second floor, Shifeng, who had overheard their conversation, couldn't help but pause. The moon god's realm? He watched the two players carefully after hearing mention of the moon god's realm. Other worlds in God's domain varied in size. When the planar passages had activated, these other worlds had gradually connected to the main continent according to size. The smaller other worlds were the first to open to the main continent. Meanwhile, the moon god's realm was one of the largest other worlds in God's domain, aside from higher planes. Now that the moon god's realm's players had arrived, the planar passages had opened fully. With all of the planar passages open, the other worlds would truly begin to impact the continent. From this point onward, not only would the competition for dominance over level 100 neutral maps become more intense, but the status quo in the various kingdoms and empires would also shift. Some kingdoms and empires might even see a new ruling power. During Shifeng's previous life, the planar passages had greatly affected Star Moon Kingdom as well. Fortunately, Star Moon Kingdom had been a mid-ranked country among the many kingdoms on the continent, so none of the most powerful otherworlds organizations had targeted the kingdom. Because of this, the various first-rate guilds that had ruled Star Moon Kingdom in the past had survived the chaos. Shifeng certainly hadn't expected the moon god's realm's powers to target his kingdom in this life. This definitely wasn't good news to Zero Wing. If powers from an otherworld like the moon god's realm targeted Zero Wing, the other powers from large-scale otherworlds wouldn't be able to ignore Star Moon Kingdom. It seems I'll have to take care of the situation in the Cold Spring Canyon quickly. With the quality and number of experts Zero Wing has, we cannot stop an assault from multiple large-scale otherworlds. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng picked up his speed. A sufficiently powerful expert might be able to turn the tides of war, but not even God's domain's strongest expert could affect multiple large-scale battles across an entire kingdom simultaneously. In the end, it would still be a competition of quantity and quality of experts as well as guild foundations. Although Zero Wing had the strength to contend with superpowers, its overall strength wasn't a match for an actual superpower. Once he had closed himself in one of the special forging rooms on the Candlelight trading firm's top floor, Shifeng pulled a Tier 3 strengthening magic scroll from his bag and chanted the incantation. Strengthening magic scrolls could reinforce magic arrays. A Tier 3 strengthening magic scroll was even effective on Grandmaster magic arrays. After activating the scroll, Shifeng targeted the forging room's defensive magic array. Now even a Tier 4 NPC would struggle to break down the door. The magic array should be strong enough now, Shifeng thought as he examined the magic runes carved into the walls. The runes brimmed with mana, significantly increasing their overall effects. following which Shifeng pulled one of the Sunset King's dropped items from his epic spatial bag after another. He wasn't being overly careful. Every item accompanied by a holy chant would be extraordinary, and all of these items had been sealed when they had dropped. These seals contain the item's auras, and the moment a player tried to appraise these items, the seals would vanish, exposing the item's true auras. Even while sealed, the combined aura the Sunset King's loot had radiated had been powerful enough that ordinary players hadn't been able to approach. Once Shifeng broke the seals, even a Tier 2 expert would likely have a hard time reaching for these items. This was why Shifeng had decided to appraise the items from within the candlelight trading firm. Had he appraised the items in some random room in Lake Mountain City, it would have caused a huge commotion. Lake Mountain City's various major powers weren't fools. Just the loot's subdued aura had been enough of a reason for them to expend Tier 4 magic scrolls willingly. If they were exposed to the full strength of the loot's aura, even White Autumn might have been tempted to take action. As Shifeng appraised one item after another, the energy in the room grew more intense. By the time he had finished, the loot's combined aura had grown more than twice as strong. So these are holy chance items? There were as many as 6 Tier 4 magic scrolls alone. There were also 45 inferior legendary materials, 6 legendary materials, 26 units of 7 luminaries crystals, 3 god crystals, 4 pieces of level 100 epic equipment, and 1 level 100 epic weapon. Every one of the 5 epic items was top tier and could be used until level 150. Unfortunately, none of them suited Shifeng. The 4 pieces of epic equipment were pieces of the Dark Flare set, a 4-piece, epic set equipment for MTs. The 4-piece set effect increased its user's basic attributes by 30%, defense by 40%, and physique by 20%. It was undoubtedly a top-tier set equipment for MTs. As for the epic weapon, it was the Fantasy Blade, a 2-handed greatsword. Its attributes might be average, but its hidden effect, Blade Blur, was frightening. When it triggered, Fantasy Blade would ignore the opponent's defense and armor for 0.5 seconds, dealing direct damage to the target. Shifeng had also appraised a fragmented legendary weapon. Brilliant Silver, 2-handed staff, fragmented legendary rank, equipment requirement, strength 800, agility 800, intelligence 2400, attack power, 210% of main attribute. All attributes increases according to user's level. When equipped, strength increased by 40%, ability increased by 40%, intelligence increased by 70%. Endurance increased by 30%, vitality increased by 50%, casting speed increased by 35%, spell completion rate increased by 4%, spell critical rate increased by 35%, stamina and concentration consumption decreased by 20%. Ignore levels plus 20 additional passive skill 1 soul transition. Increases the user's soul by 1 tier. Can be increased up to tier 5. Additional passive skill 2 mana blessing. User spells have a certain chance to be upgraded by 1 tier. Can be increased up to tier 5. Additional passive skill 3 mana body. Increases mana body's effect by 1 rank. Additional active skill 1 void field. All magic damage received decreased by 80%. All spells effects increased by 100%. Physique increased by 60%. Duration, 1 minute cooldown. 2 hours additional active skill 2 Void Blade. Summons 18 blades using the power of Void. Each blade possesses strength equal to 120% of the user's main attribute and deals divine damage. Duration, 30 seconds. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Cooldown, 5 minutes. Brilliant Silver had once belonged to the Void Creator. However, its core had been severely damaged when the staff had been used to repair the world's heart. In addition, to gain full control of the staff, one must be acknowledged by the Void Creator. Repairing it requires 10 God Crystals. God Crystals required to repair Brilliant Silver, 0/10. Brilliant Silver was suitable for any magical class expert and would qualitatively transform a player's combat power. Its ability to improve its user's mana body was particularly useful to Tier 3 players. However, none of these items could compare to the most valuable item the Sunset King had dropped in Shifeng's eyes. Not even the other item's total value could compare to this single item. The 4-star shop promotion order. Chapter 2348 4-star shop. Mainstream players haven't even reached level 100, yet Zero Wing is about to own a 4-star shop. If the various superpowers in the past knew about this, they'd die from envy. Shifeng couldn't help his growing excitement as he gazed at the shining, black token in his hand. A 4-star shop promotion order was roughly worth as much as a fragmented legendary item, but it was far more difficult to obtain. Even of the many superpowers in God's domain, only a minority could obtain a 4-star shop promotion order. No power would trade a 4-star shop promotion order, even if offered a legendary item. Similar to the qualitative transformation players undergone when they rose from Tier 2 to Tier 3, shops would transform when they were upgraded from 3-star to 4-star status. Shops in God's domain were considered basic rank from 1 to 3-star status, but once they reached 4-star status, they'd become an advanced shop. Not only would all of the shop's existing functions improve, but it would also gain new major functions. The first was the research workshop. The research workshop would be tremendously helpful to lifestyle players as they work to rise through the ranks. Not even the Philosopher's Hand or Moon God's Secret Journal could compete. The research workshop could examine data on existing items and identify their deficiencies. Players could then modify and improve these items, thereby creating a new item. It was easy to imagine how helpful this would be to lifestyle players. The research workshops were a large part of the reason the various superpowers had been able to nurture master, even grandmaster lifestyle players during Shifeng's previous life. Without these workshops, the various superpowers would have, at most, been able to nurture master lifestyle players, even if they relied on all sorts of rare materials. None of them would have had enough super rare materials to nurture a grandmaster. Now that Zero Wing had access to a research workshop, the guild could have a large batch of master lifestyle players in no time with how many talented lifestyle players it already had. God's domain's designs for high-ranked weapons and equipment were incredibly rare already, but after level 100, rare would be an understatement. Trying to obtain a high-quality design would be like trying to win the lottery. Hence, the various major powers would have to rely on lifestyle players for such items. Of course, creating a high-ranked level 100+ weapon or equipment piece was easier said than done. Because of this, the cost for high-ranked level 100+ weapons and equipment would skyrocket as mainstream players reached level 100. Not even ordinary expert players would be able to afford such items. In fact, some ordinary experts would be stuck using level 100 equipment even after they reached level 110. Meanwhile, this scarcity would only begin to subside as 4-star shops began to emerge. The various major powers experts would still need some time to reach level 100, not to mention the time they'd need to obtain high-quality level-appropriate weapons and equipment. Zero Wing's experts were no exception. If Zero Wing could secure a source of weapons and equipment early on, these items would be immensely helpful to the guild's experts as they gained more combat power and cleared their Tier 3 promotion quests. The second ability the shop would gain with its 4-star status would help a power dominate the market. The shared warehouse. At 4-star status, a shop would gain a shared warehouse and the ability to create similar warehouses in 5 3-star shops. These shared warehouses would be connected. The function might not seem glamorous, but countless powers dreamed of having such an ability. With a shared warehouse, a power could transfer items across long distances at no cost, including non-bag space items. Transporting non-bag space items had always been a huge problem in God's domain, and the shared warehouse was one of the few methods that could solve this problem. Because of this, the various powers of Shifeng's previous life had fought to promote their shops to 4-star status, with some even trading legendary items for the promotion order. There was a catch, of course. Once items had been placed in the shared warehouse, they'd be frozen for 24 hours, locked in the warehouse. Moreover, there was an extremely limited amount of space for non-bag space items. At the 4-star status, the shared warehouse could only hold up to 200 non-bag space items at a time. Even so, the function would save a lot of money and transportation time. Most importantly, this method of relocating items was safe. Had Shadow possessed a 4-star shop during Shifeng's previous life, the guild wouldn't have taken so many risks to move highly valuable non-bag space items, getting robbed by powerful NPCs. Unfortunately, 4-star shop promotion orders were painfully rare in God's domain. Only a small number of superpowers could enjoy the luxury of owning a 4-star shop. Due to these two functions, not even powers with 103-star shops could compete with those that had a 4-star and a few 3-star shops for dominance over the market. Thinking up to this point, Shi Feng collected the Sunset King's loot in his bag and stored the 7 luminaries crystals and god crystals in his private warehouse. He then made his way to the city hall to upgrade the Candlelight trading firm to a 4-star shop. He also notified Melancholic Smile and had her mass recruit players for Candlelight's internal membership, pausing normal recruitment for now. Previously, Candlelight hadn't met the conditions for expansion. The trading firm only had a limited number of special workshops and meditation rooms after all. Moreover, competition between the various trading firms hadn't been particularly intense as designs for high-quality weapons and equipment below level 100 were relatively easy to obtain. However, that was about to change. Any design or recipe a player found in a level 100+ neutral map would be incredibly valuable. Now that Candlelight was about to have a 4-star shop, Shi Feng couldn't allow the trading firm to operate as liberally as it had been. Moreover, otherworld players were flooding to the main continent, and they would have a massive impact on the status quo, especially those from otherworlds like the Moon God's realm who focused on lifestyle development. Other worlds like these would have a huge impact on the main continent's economy. To compete against these other worlds, Candlelight would need to nurture its lifestyle players to a higher standard. However, Candlelight had many secrets it had to protect. Thus, it would need more internal members, not normal members. Guild leader, our recruitment requirements are already quite demanding. If we start recruiting with these standards, I'm afraid that other powers will use the opportunity to poach some of our members. Melancholic Smile cautioned after listening to Shi Feng's new requirements. Few of God's domain's lifestyle players enjoyed being bound by strict contracts. Hence, the various major powers typically offered relaxed conditions. If Candlelight increased its requirements, they'd be lucky not to lose normal members, much less recruit new internal members. Furthermore, Starlink was still trying to steal Candlelight's members. If they increased the trading firm's strict conditions, Candlelight would suffer for it. Relax. That is only true if they can steal our members, Shi Feng said, chuckling. He then held up the 4-star shop promotion order to the display and continued, "What do you think this is? Is that a 4-star shop promotion order?" Melancholic Smile's eyes went wide with shock when she saw the black token. Guild leader, is that real? Many superpowers had upgraded their own shops to 3-star status by now, and as a result, Candlelight's advantages became less prominent by the day. As a result, Candlelight's advantages were continuously shrinking by the day. Now the trading firm could only rely on its secret techniques to attract new members. If Candlelight had a 4-star shop, however, it would reclaim its lead over its competition. Of course it's real, Shi Feng said, chuckling. I'll leave the recruitment to you. We need to get this done as quickly as possible. All right. I'll make the announcement immediately. Melancholic Smile nodded. Melancholic Smile did as she promised, and news quickly spread that Candlelight was mass recruiting for internal members in the various kingdoms and empires. What's Candlelight trying to do? It's only recruiting internal members? Candlelight has become too arrogant after being named a sacred land for lifestyle players. Not only are its recruitment requirements so high, but all applicants must become internal members as well? Lifestyle players would be better off joining a different guild. They'd have more freedom than in Candlelight. Candlelight's latest recruitment announcement enraged many lifestyle players, and quite a few of them who had intended to apply, promptly abandoned the idea. Meanwhile, 2 players radiating powerful life auras lounged in one of White River City's advanced restaurants. They were none other than the female druid and male guardian knight from the Moon God's realm who had come to investigate Star Moon Kingdom's alchemical standards. Across from them sat a woman that fit the idea of a cool beauty, to a.t. She wore an intermediate master alchemist's insignia pinned to her chest. I didn't expect to find you here, Silent, but you won't have a future if you choose to continue developing in this kingdom. Zero Wing can't help you. Why don't you just join Dark Pursuit? With your standards, you're guaranteed to earn a high position in the guild, and you'll have access to plenty of resources, including resources Candlelight can't ever hope to offer, the female druid suggested, trying to persuade Silent Wonder. Memory is right. The main continent's alchemical resources are too scarce. Not even the superpowers here can compare to Dark Pursuit's alchemical resources, much less Zero Wing. Zhou Xian has already received a lot of support and resources from Dark Pursuit. Do you really want to lose the family competition to her? The male guardian knight asked. You know that you don't have much time left. I understand, but I need a little more time to think about it, Silent Wonder said hesitantly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You Silent, you can't keep putting this off. If you can't decide, I might as well have a talk with your guild leader. I don't mind showing him the difference between our strengths if he refuses to let you go, the female druid, Cold Memory, declared, raising a fist. I'll go with you. I doubt he'd dare waste more of Silent's time once he hears Dark Pursuit's name, the male guardian knight nodded. Elsewhere, Shifeng had arrived at White River City's City Hall. Closer. How may I be of service? The NPC beauty behind the VIP counter amicably asked Shifeng. I wish to upgrade the Candlelight Trading Firm to 4-star status. Here is the promotion order, Shifeng said as he handed the promotion order to the NPC. Chapter 2349, New Candlelight Trading Firm. When the NPC administrator saw the 4-star shop promotion order, she gave Shifeng an odd look. Sir, do you really wish to promote your shop to 4-star status? She asked for confirmation. Is there a problem? Shifeng asked strangely. As far as Shifeng could remember, the city hall managed shop promotions within its city. Although he had never upgraded a shop to 4-star status before, the process should not be any different than the previous upgrades. Sir, a 4-star shop isn't like normal shops. If you promote your shop to 4-star status as per our prior agreement, the kingdom's laws will no longer be able to protect your shop. Rather, you will take full control and responsibility for the land and any danger you encounter, the NPC administrator slowly explained. I will have complete ownership of the land? Realization dawned on Shifeng. He had never thought that 4-star shops would have such a secret. It was no wonder why 4-star shops he had visited in the past had seemed somewhat odd. When Shifeng had visited 4-star shops in his past, he had noticed that many peak experts had been stationed in the shops long-term. They had become a normal sight. He had assumed the ruling powers had simply meant to deter other experts that ignored NPC soldiers. However, it seemed there had been a much greater reason. With the country's protection, players could do whatever they wanted in these shops, and NPC soldiers wouldn't even bat an eye. If they stole from the shop, they wouldn't have to worry about the NPC soldiers capturing and jailing them for a month. And the various large guilds' shops usually sold incredibly precious treasures. If players could steal these items without repercussions, they'd certainly try. If a power weren't strong enough to protect their products in 4-star shop, the shop they had gone to such great lengths to nurture would be crippled. Sir, do you still wish to promote your shop? The NPC administrator asked again. Yes, Shifeng decided. There was a lot of risk to upgrading a shop to 4-star status, but the risks were insignificant compared to the benefits. Now all he had to do was to figure out how to improve the shop's security. The cost of rebuilding and expanding your territory will be calculated independently. Here are the reconstruction and expansion options. You may choose whichever you wish. If you are not satisfied with the results, you may reconstruct and expand again, the NPC administrator said, smiling as she handed Shifeng a list. How vicious! Shifeng was flabbergasted when he saw the stated prices. Reconstruction meant adding new floors to the shop. In this regard, he had 3 choices: 12 floors, 15 floors, and 21 floors. They would cost 20,000 gold, 40,000 gold, and 100,000 gold respectively. The expansion cost was even more ruthless. Gaining 40% more land would cost 50,000 gold, while each additional 10% would cost 30,000 gold to a maximum of a 100% expansion. This was even more expensive than constructing a city. First-rate guilds would be considered quite wealthy if they had 50,000 gold in liquid funds, yet that was only a fraction of the cost for reconstructing and expanding the shop. Although Zero Wing had recently earned a lot of money, with around 170,000 gold in liquid funds, it couldn't afford to splurge on a 4-star shop. The guild still needed to pay the recruitment costs for 5,000 NPC knights after all. Shifeng's hesitation didn't last long, however. After a moment he chose the 21-story option and expanded the shop's land by 40%. Unlike 3-star shops which had a fixed number of special workshops and meditation rooms, a 4-star shop with more floors could contain more special workshops and meditations rooms. For example, the 15-story version would only have 30 special workshops, while the 21-story building would have 50 special workshops. As for the basic meditation room, a 21-story shop would have as many as 12 in total, which would be more than enough to satisfy Candlelight's lifestyle players. In fact, it would be enough to allow Shifeng to reserve one for himself. Unfortunately, the number of total floors wouldn't affect the number of research workshops the shop possessed. Even in the 21-story shop, the shop would only have a single research workshop. As for the additional land, that would only allow the shop to accommodate more players. Hence, Shifeng prioritized the number of floors for his shop over the shop size. All right. Your bill comes to 155,000 gold, the NPC administrator said, flashing Shifeng a bright smile. Once you've completed the payment, our men will head over and start the reconstruction. The process should take half an hour. During this time nobody will be allowed into the shop. That won't be a problem, Shifeng replied. His heart ached a little as he handed over the payment. He had just spent a ridiculous amount of money, but with a 4-star shop's abilities he could likely earn it all back within the first week. Even during his previous life, research workshops had been one of the best tools to nurture lifestyle players. Since he still had some time before mainstream players reached level 100, the research workshop would be priceless. Meanwhile, after Shifeng completed the payment, the NPC administrator handed him the deed to the Candlelight trading firm. Once the shop's reconstruction was complete, White River City's Candlelight trading firm would become Shifeng's personal possession. He would then be responsible for the shop's security. With this task complete, Shifeng left the city hall and returned to the Candlelight trading firm. He intended to spend some time planning the shop's security measures. However, halfway through his journey, Melancholic Smile called. Guild leader, 2 people are here to meet you. They've identified themselves as Dark Pursuit's representatives and say that they'd like to negotiate a partnership, Melancholic Smile excitedly reported. Any player that had spent time in the virtual gaming world knew about the guild known as Dark Pursuit. The Super Guild was famous for its focus on support classes. Although Dark Pursuit did not operate on the main continent, no power dared to underestimate it. If Candlelight could secure an alliance with the Super Guild, it could gain some serious advantages. Partnership. The news confused Shifeng. He had never expected Dark Pursuit to seek cooperation with Zero Wing. I understand. Have them head to the Candlelight trading firm. I'll be there in a moment. Following which, Shifeng picked up his pace and hurried toward the Candlelight trading firm. Meanwhile, chaos filled the street outside of the Candlelight trading firm. As soon as Shifeng had paid for the promotion, every player that had been in the shop had been teleported to the street outside. The abrupt interruption had left the shoppers and Candlelight members stunned. What's going on? Why was I forced out of the shop? Crap. I wasn't done shopping. What is Candlelight trying to do? Does it want our business or not? The customers that had been teleported out of the shop flew into a rage. He requested us to meet him here yet closed the shop? Is Zero Wing's guild leader toying with us? Cold Memory, who had just arrived, snarled. Her investigation into Zero Wing's Candlelight trading firm had been quite thorough. The lifestyle players that worked for the trading firm had excellent standards. Candlelight even had 3 basic meditation rooms, which were incredibly helpful to lifestyle players. However, it was still significantly weaker than Dark Pursuit. Dark Pursuit had basic meditation rooms, but it also had intermediate meditation rooms. Naturally, the intermediate meditation rooms were more effective than the basic version and could greatly improve a lifestyle player's production success rates. Since the guild's elders supported Yen Xiaoqian, Silent Wonder's opponent in the upcoming competition, they allowed her to use the intermediate meditation room for up to 3 hours per day. Because of this, her development speed was astonishing. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I am familiar with Guild Leader Black Flame's general disposition. He wouldn't play such an underhanded trick. I suspect he's ordered impromptu renovations for the shop. Let's just wait for a bit, Silent Wonder said. Renovations? Is it necessary to cause such a scene just for a simple renovation? Cold Memory muttered disdainfully. The various powers did renovate their shops from time to time to attract more customers, but no matter how many renovations they did, they'd at most change the interior design. Not long after Cold Memory's comment, the magic barrier enveloping the candlelight trading firm dissipated. As it did, it revealed a 100-meter-tall building. The nearby player-owned shops, which were only 4 or 5 stories tall, and the NPC shops, which were about a dozen stories tall, looked like children next to the upgraded candlelight trading firm. Chapter 2350 Crazy Masters. The candlelight trading firm's new appearance stupefied every player on the street. Immerse massive. What did Zero Wing do? They were overcome with shock as they gazed up at the humongous candlelight trading firm. The surrounding player-owned shops might look extravagant, but they were nothing compared to Candlelight's 100-meter-tall shop. The merchant players were particularly stunned, staring with wide eyes and dropped jaws at the new candlelight trading firm shop. Ordinary players didn't usually understand God's Domain's rules regarding its shops, but merchant players like them were very familiar with these rules and regulations. Shop construction in NPC cities was heavily regulated. Players couldn't simply build as many floors as they wanted. For example, a 3-star shop could only have up to 9 floors. And yet, the candlelight trading firm in White River City now had 21 floors. Not only could a shop display more merchandise with more floors, but it could also house more lifestyle players. An ordinary shop's environment couldn't compare to that of the various subclasses associations, but once it reached 3-star status, a shop would offer better advanced workshops than the subclass associations. This was one of the factors that attracted so many lifestyle players to White River City's candlelight trading firm. Moreover, there wasn't a limit to how many advanced workshops a 3-star shop could have as long as it had enough space for all of them. What's going on? How can a player-owned shop in an NPC city have 21 floors? Cold Memory stared at the candlelight trading firm in shock. When she had investigated the main continent's shops, the largest she had seen had only been 9 stories tall, yet the candlelight trading firm before her had more than double that. It also occupied more land than other 3-star shops. Did he promote the candlelight trading firm? South Dream, the male guardian knight, murmured as he considered a possibility. However, he couldn't be certain about the idea. I'm pretty sure he promoted it to 4-star status. It wouldn't have transformed so massively otherwise. Silent Wonder nodded. Although she seemed calm, she was just as surprised as her 2 companions. Promoting a shop was an incredibly difficult task, especially after it had reached 3-star status. Even at this stage of the game, very few superpowers had 3-star shops. However, it seemed that the candlelight trading firm now has a 4-star shop, which would give it major advantages. It seems Zero Wing is quite capable after all, but so what if it has a 4-star shop? Cold Memory said, clicking her tongue. Haughtily she continued, Dark Pursuit has already captured an ancient civilization's town and owns an intermediate meditation room, which no one on the main continent has acquired. How could a shop compare to a town? Ancient civilizations had greater technology than what could be found in the current kingdoms and empires, and Dark Pursuit had secured an ancient civilization's town that specialized in lifestyle development in the moon god's realm. The technology in that town easily surpasses any within a mere shop. Moreover, as the town developed, the guild would unlock more advantages. The shop's open now. Let's head inside, Silent Wonder said. Silent Wonder didn't try to argue with Cold Memory. The woman had already shown her proof, and she had to admit that the moon god's realm's lifestyle standards were far beyond that of the main continent. Moreover, Dark Pursuit's alchemical techniques were just as impressive as Zero Wing's. Hence, Cold Memory qualified to be so arrogant. Meanwhile, Melancholic Smile had been waiting before the candlelight's entrance for quite some time. When she saw Silent Wonder's group approach, she led them inside, earning the surrounding players' envy and admiration. Everyone was curious about the candlelight trading firm's promotion, and they all wanted to inspect the new changes for themselves, especially the lifestyle players who had come to join the trading firm. However, non-members weren't allowed to enter the shop at the moment. They had to wait outside, which was why they jealously watched Cold Memory and South Dream, both outsiders, enter the shop. As they entered the building, Silent Wonder, Cold Memory, and South Dream were shocked by what they saw. When they entered the shop, they felt as if they had just stepped into an entirely different world. Not only was the shop's interior far more magnificent and brilliant than it had been earlier, but its mana density was twice as high as well. They felt incredibly calm and clear-headed as they stood in the doorway. As Cold Memory and South Dream followed Melancholic Smile to the candlelight trading firm's top floor, what they saw on the various floors rendered them speechless. There were now more than 40 special workshops and as many as 12 basic meditation rooms. It was enough to rival the number in the ancient civilization's town. Fortunately for them, Candlelight didn't seem to have an intermediate meditation room, which meant Cold Memory and South Dream still had a chance of dragging Silent Wonder into Dark Pursuit. Melancholic Smile quickly led Silent Wonder and her companions to the top floor. As the group was about to enter the top floor reception room, Cold Memory and South Dream noticed a commotion at the end of the corridor. A group of players crowded before a door made of magic crystals, looking in with ecstatic expressions. To Cold Memory and South Dream, those players looked like a pack of wolves that hadn't eaten for several days. What astonished the two outsiders, however, was the fact that every one of those players wore the insignia of a lifestyle master. Sister Melancholic, can I use the research workshop for a moment? I promise I'll be quick. Melancholic, we're all core members and just a step away from reaching intermediate master rank. I'll even hand over all of my GCPs to use the research workshop for 3 days. Crap. You want 3 days? I'd be satisfied to use it for 1 day. Every one of these master lifestyle players gave Melancholic Smile desperate, passionate looks. Afraid that she'd reject their requests, they offered everything they had to convince her. Have these people gone insane? When Cold Memory saw the master lifestyle players' behavior, her worldview shifted. Even in the various superpowers, master lifestyle players enjoyed VIP treatment. Yet these candlelight masters were begging Melancholic Smile just to enter a room, the research workshop. Her guild's master lifestyle players would call her crazy if she told them about this. Even the intermediate meditation room was only slightly helpful to master lifestyle players. It wasn't such a treasure that players would beg and bribe to use it. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You calm down. We have yet to decide the rules for the research workshop, and we're not letting anyone use it until we do. Once the guild leader has set up the rules, any internal member that has successfully become a master will get an opportunity to use it, Melancholic Smile said, attempting to placate the crowd. The master lifestyle players seemed satisfied with Melancholic Smile's response, and they said nothing more. She had already confirmed that the trading firm's internal master lifestyle players would get an opportunity to use the room, and for now that was good enough. All they had to do was wait. Even so, they still stared at the door longingly as they left. Shopkeeper Melancholic, may I know what that research workshop is? South Dream asked curiously. In Dark Pursuit, a basic lifestyle master enjoyed the same status as peak experts like himself. Intermediate masters had an even higher rank in the guild than he did. However, quite a few of those master lifestyle players had been intermediate masters, yet they begged Melancholic Smile to let them into the research workshop. Why wouldn't it make him curious? The research workshop? That's a new room our shop has gained with its promotion to 4-star status. Since no one is using it right now, why don't we head in and take a look? Melancholic Smile suggested. Rather than keeping the room a secret, she invited Cold Memory and South Dream inside. Chapter 2351, Frightening Research Workshop. After they made their way over to the research workshop, Melancholic Smile slowly pushed open the heavy crystalline doors. As the doors parted, incomparably dense mana flooded out. Even Silent Wonder, who was used to working in high mana density environments, felt refreshed as the workshop's mana hit her. She felt as if she had just woken from a sweet dream. Cold Memory and South Dream, on the other hand, stared at the research workshop in astonishment, unable to process what was happening even as their minds became clear and sharp. How can this room have such high mana density? Cold Memory gave the workshop an incredulous look. There was a special magic array that could gather an immense amount of mana in the ancient civilization town Dark Pursuit had captured. Hence, the mana density within the town was unusually high. Naturally, the town's intermediate meditation room had the highest mana density in the town, but compared to this research workshop, the intermediate meditation room's mana density was a joke. Cold Memory couldn't fathom how a mere shop had such incredible mana density. However, what she saw as she entered the research workshop shocked her even more. The majority of the research workshop had been constructed with magic crystals, and some parts of the workshop were even made with mana stones. The room was like a magic crystal cave. In the research workshop, our members can study new designs and recipes. Not only is the mana density here extremely high, but the room also has a special instrument that can analyze all sorts of items, giving players the information they need to strengthen and modify their work to create new and better designs and recipes. Melancholic Smile introduced. Assist players in creating new designs and recipes. Impossible. Cold Memory and South Dream instinctively denied Melancholic Smile's claim. Almost every player in the Moon God's realm understood how difficult it was to reach the next lifestyle promotion. Once lifestyle players reached the advanced rank, their greatest hurdle was the creation of new designs and recipes. If it were possible to increase players' chances of creating new designs, a power could nurture master lifestyle players far faster than its competition. For advanced lifestyle players, accumulating enough proficiency points for their promotion to master rank was easy, but the same couldn't be said for creating new designs and recipes. The task required a lot of materials and experimentation. The amount of gold and resources an advanced lifestyle player would need was astronomical. Because of the cost, the various major powers were very careful when selecting advanced lifestyle players to nurture. Dark Pursuit's intermediate meditation room only helped clear players' minds so they could focus when producing items. It couldn't help them create new items. I see that the two of you are advanced alchemists. Why don't you give it a try? You can see for yourselves whether or not I'm telling the truth, Melancholic Smile said. She wasn't surprised that her two guests refused to believe her. When she had first learned about the research workshop's function, even she found it hard to believe. To lifestyle players, gaining access to the research workshop's ability was akin to combat players getting their hands on a tool with godly abilities. It was expected that Cold MEM and South Dream would be skeptical about the research workshop. We'll have to trouble you then, shopkeeper Melancholic. With Melancholic Smile's blessing, Cold Memory saw no reason to hold back. Her declaration was simply impossible. Zero Wing was merely lying to people in an attempt to look good before Dark Pursuit. Following which, Melancholic Smile spent 1,000 magic crystals to activate the research workshop's instrument. As soon as she did, the mana density in the room rose. What a powerful mana. It's no wonder why she made such a foolish claim. Even if she were lying about the workshop's ability, such an environment would be immensely helpful when creating new items. South Dream was flabbergasted as he felt the room's mana density change. Unlike her companion, however, Cold Memory wasn't yet convinced. She retrieved a bottle of Breath of Life, an advanced potion, from her bag and placed it on the workshop's scanner. She then waited for the research workshop to analyze the potion. Her lack of reaction rendered South Dream speechless. He thought she was taking this a little too seriously. The Breath of Life was a super rare advanced potion in God's domain. When consumed, it reduced the amount of EXP players would lose after their next death. The potion was just slightly less difficult to brew than a master potion. As a potion that was close to master rank, modifying the Breath of Life potion further was incredibly challenging. Even master alchemists struggled to accomplish the feat. How much help could the research workshop's apparatus possibly provide? However, before South Dream could try to dissuade Cold Memory, the research workshop's apparatus completed its analysis. Immediately, the holographic screen displayed a mass of information. How is this possible? South Dream's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets when he saw the lines of data. After conducting its analysis, the apparatus had revealed 11 aspects that required modification and 6 aspects that could be strengthened. The situation even shocked Silent Wonder, not to mention her visitors. She had researched the Breath of Life potion as well, but with her current alchemical standards and knowledge, she had only found 3 aspects that needed modification and 1 that could be strengthened. She wasn't far from becoming an advanced master alchemist, and Zero Wing had provided her with plenty of alchemical information. These were the only reasons that she had been able to improve the Breath of Life potion to such an extent. Any other master alchemists would likely struggle to modify the potion successfully without extensive research into the recipe. As for Cold Memory, she was utterly dumbfounded when she saw the data on the research workshop's holographic screen. She had dedicated a lot of time to researching the Breath of Life potion, searching for the key that would allow her to become a master alchemist. But after all her research and experiments, she had been stuck in a dead end. So that's the case. I made a mistake there. It's no wonder why I never succeeded. Cold memory couldn't help her elation as she read the information. She had found a clue to one of the modification aspects the research workshop pointed out, but she hadn't been able to follow that clue to the end, even after countless experiments. Eventually she had given up on the clue, tired of wasting her time. She hadn't actually realized that she had been on the right track. The herbs she had used just hadn't been potent enough. If she replaced those herbs with higher quality ones, she'd substantially increase her success rate. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Considering this fact, Cold Memory began to conduct a test. She always carried the materials necessary to brew the Breath of Life potion to ensure that she could experiment when inspiration struck her. Fortunately, the research workshop had just the facilities she needed and incredibly dense mana. It was the perfect place to brew a potion. In less than 10 minutes, Cold Memory had successfully created a bottle of dark blue liquid that radiated incredible life energy, far stronger than the life energy the prior Breath of Life potion had radiated. It's a success. I succeeded. After appraising the dark blue potion, Cold Memory turned to her companion with a bright, excited expression. She had just become a master alchemist, standing at the apex of God's domain's alchemy industry. Chapter 2352. He's Tier 3. She succeeded just like that? South Dreams stared at the excited Cold Memory in shock. He was very familiar with her alchemy standards, which were basically on par with his. Hence, he knew that she should have needed a lot more time and effort to become a master alchemist. And yet, after a few minutes in the research workshop, she had completed her promotion. If he told his guildmates about this, the other alchemists would likely think he'd gone mad. The various superpowers respected master lifestyle players because they were so rare. Less than 1% of the lifestyle players in God's domain had the potential to reach the master rank, and each one that succeeded would have dedicated a lot of time and effort into their craft. However, it seemed that lifestyle players could easily cross that threshold by relying on the research workshop, saving a lot of time, effort, and resources. In other words, Zero Wing could now nurture master lifestyle players far more easily than the various superpowers. So long as Zero Wing willed it, it could likely produce a large group of master lifestyle players as it needed. What do you two think of the research workshop's effects? Melancholic Smile asked, chuckling lightly when she saw the Cold Memory's ecstatic expression and South Dream's surprised reaction. In truth, even Melancholic Smile was surprised at how quickly Cold Memory had been promoted to Master Alchemist, after just a few minutes of using the research workshop. Shi Feng had told her that nurturing master lifestyle players would still be a major hurdle, even with the research workshop's help. The workshop merely provided guidelines. Whether or not players could follow those guidelines depended on their abilities. To put it simply, the research workshop was simply a support tool. When they heard Melancholic Smile's question, Cold Memory and South Dream realized they had lost their composure. With a fake dry cough, Cold Memory awkwardly said, "Not bad. This research workshop is certainly helpful in creating new items, as you said." She tried to play it off, but the research workshop had completely exceeded her expectations. She had a far better understanding of the workshop's power than her companion. Initially, she had assumed she'd be limited to the Master Alchemist standard, but after using the research workshop, she could see herself becoming a Grandmaster Alchemist in the future. A Grandmaster Alchemist. Even Dark Pursuit's top alchemists struggled to reach such a prestigious rank. Currently, they estimated that their chances of reaching the Grandmaster rank were less than 10%, but if she could use the research workshop long-term, she was confident that she had as high as a 30% chance of becoming a Grandmaster Alchemist. South Dream could only nod in response to Melancholic Smile's question. He simply didn't know what to say. They had come to inform Zero Wing of the difference between their guilds when it came to developing lifestyle players. However, not only had they discovered that Zero Wing had just as many basic meditations rooms as Dark Pursuit, but the guild also had a godly tool like the research workshop. What could he possibly say? What confused South Dream the most was that, despite not being a superpower, Zero Wing had already gotten its hands on such powerful training resources for lifestyle players. "I'm glad it's to your satisfaction. Our guild leader is waiting in the reception room. We should meet him, Melancholic Smile said, a slow smile forming as she watched her visitor's silent reactions. While Melancholic Smile led them to the reception room, Cold Memory and South Dream had a private conversation through their team chat. Memory's Zero Wing is better equipped to nurture lifestyle players than we expected. Not even out intermediate meditation room is a match for that research workshop, South Dream said, smiling bitterly. I'm afraid that we don't have the resources to offer in exchange for wonder. They had planned to offer Zero Wing training resources in exchange for nullifying Silent Wonder's contract with the guild. After all, Dark Pursuit's training resources were far superior to what the main continent's various powers possessed. If Zero Wing agreed, it'd give up Silent Wonder, but it would acquire the ability to nurture several more lifestyle players. It was definitely a tempting offer. But it seemed the situation wasn't what they had thought. With the research workshop, Zero Wing was even better equipped to nurture master lifestyle players than Dark Pursuit. In fact, if Dark Pursuit's upper echelons and guild elders found out about this, they'd likely offer Zero Wing a huge sum of gold and resources to purchase time in the research workshop for their own lifestyle players. If they tried to offer Zero Wing training resources now, they'd make fools of themselves. It's too early to give up, Cold Memory said, gritting her teeth. I admit that Zero Wing's ability to nurture lifestyle players is impressive, but don't forget that strength is the most important factor in God's domain. Even if Zero Wing can nurture an army of master lifestyle players, it doesn't necessarily have the strength to protect them. Not only does our guild have excellent training resources, but we're also far stronger than Zero Wing. We can simply offer Zero Wing protection in exchange for wonder. That should be tempting enough. Based on our reports, many otherworld powers have begun to move against Star Moon Kingdom in secret. Surviving in such a situation will be a major challenge for Zero Wing, but if the guild had Dark Pursuit's protection, it might be a different story. Most importantly, Wonder's competition with Xianxia isn't limited to alchemy. With Zero Wing's foundations, how could it possibly provide the same resources Xianxia currently receives? Zero Wing's lifestyle facilities had certainly taken her by surprise, but strength was more important than anything in God's domain. With Zero Wing's current strength, staying in the guild would do more harm than good to Silent Wonder in the long run. She might even unintentionally drag her family down with her if she stayed in this guild. I guess you're right. We can't let Wonder waste any more time in Zero Wing, South Dream said. After giving the matter some thought, he agreed with Cold Memory's view of the situation. If the competition between Silent Wonder and Xianxia only involved alchemy standards, allowing her to remain in Zero Wing wouldn't be an issue. However, that wasn't the case. This was also a competition of strength. Since Xianxia had joined Dark Pursuit, Silent Wonder would be at a disadvantage if she didn't do the same. In fact, she might even be disqualified before she had the chance to compete against Xianxia. While Cold Memory and South Dream silently conversed, the group arrived before the top-floor reception room. Guild leader, Dark Pursuit's representatives are here, Melancholic Smile declared as she gently pushed open the doors. Come in, Shifeng said, nodding. Hearing Shifeng's reply, Melancholic Smile led Cold Memory's group into the reception room. The instant the two Dark Pursuit representatives entered the room, they felt an incomparably powerful aura wash over them. For a moment they nearly stumbled. What a strong life aura. Is he really a player? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The two looked at Shifeng in disbelief as the man sat at the reception room's desk. As players from the Moon God's realm, they were far more sensitive to life hours than ordinary players, and the aura they felt from Shifeng was like nothing they had ever felt before from a player. The gap between their life ratings and Shifeng's was obvious. If not for the green marker hovering above Shifeng's head, they would have suspected that the man before them was actually a monster in human skin. Not even players with a god's blessing radiate such an intense life aura. Has he already reached Tier 3? South Dream wondered in their team chat. Tier 3. How is this possible? Cold Memory could not help but stare at the swordsman, utterly astonished. Chapter 2353. Bit off more than they could chew. What is this guild? As Cold Memory stared at Shifeng, she felt as if she were hallucinating. Before she had actually met the man, she had considered what she might say to persuade him. She refused to believe that he wouldn't be interested in the conditions she had to offer. However, as she met Shifeng face to face, her words caught in her throat. The fact that they hadn't known about Zero Wing's research workshop wasn't a major issue. The candlelight trading firm had just been promoted to 4-star status after all. It was expected that there would be some deviation to their investigation results. However, they had also just found out that Zero Wing's guild leader was already a Tier 3 player. A Tier 3 player. None of Dark Pursuit's players had even reached level 100 yet, much less complete their Tier 3 promotion quests. At this stage of the game, they knew how massive the gap was between tiers. A Tier 3 player could give the current superpowers massive headaches. Killing Tier 2 players would be child's play for a Tier 3 player. Moreover, due to how soon Shifeng had reached Tier 3, he could benefit his guild far more than before. The main god system had specifically prepared level 100 neutral maps for Tier 3 players. Exploring such maps was impossible for current players. Realizing that Cold Memory was dazed, South Dream gritted his teeth and stepped forward. Greetings, Guild Leader Black Flame. I am South Dream, a main force vice commander from Dark Pursuit's 4th branch. South Dream nervously introduced himself. My companion is Cold Memory. She is one of the main force vice commanders from the 4th branch as well. We are here to represent our guild in negotiations concerning a partnership. South Dream had been confident that he could negotiate with Zero Wing's guild leader as an equal before he had met him, but now his confidence was gone. Even the 4th branch's vice guild leader would have to treat a Tier 3 powerhouse with respect at this stage of the game. If they provoked such a player, and that powerhouse decided to disregard the consequences of causing trouble, their guild would suffer for it. Dark Pursuit's 4th branch? Nodding, Shifeng asked calmly, how do you wish to collaborate with Zero Wing? Super guilds were massive organizations. Thus, they divided their territories among their branch guilds. When another power wished to ally with a super guild, they'd do so through a branch guild. Powers rarely allied with a super guild as a whole. Dark Pursuit had 5 main branches, and as far as Shifeng knew, the 4th branch controlled a considerable amount of the guild's alchemical resources, including many of the Moon God's realm's specialty materials for potions. During his previous life, the 4th branch had played a huge role in Dark Pursuit's success with occupying the market in many of the main continent's kingdoms and empires. Truthfully, we are here to request that Zero Wing allow Silent Wonder to join Dark Pursuit, Cold Memory said, gritting her teeth. I know the proposal is a little offensive, but you might not realize her true identity and the responsibility she holds, Guild Leader Black Flame. If she remains in Zero Wing, she will only bring ruin upon herself. She can only resolve the issue she faces by joining our guild. Of course, our 4th branch will do everything within our authority to supply Zero Wing with various resources in exchange. With these resources, Zero Wing will be able to develop further. I hope that you will do what's best for Silent Wonder's future. The foundations Zero Wing had displayed thus far had greatly surprised Cold Memory. She was especially shocked by Shifeng's status as a Tier 3 player. However, after all was said and done, Shifeng was only one player. Meanwhile, a single individual couldn't free Silent Wonder from her predicament. She'd only be able to resolve her problem by joining a super guild like Dark Pursuit. Memory. Silent Wonder snapped, annoyed and hinting that Cold Memory should stop speaking. It was her business after all, and she owed Zero Wing a massive debt of gratitude. During her membership, the guild had offered unusually loose restrictions and gave her everything she needed to improve her alchemy standards quickly. Now that Zero Wing needed her strength, she couldn't just abandon the guild for her own interests. Although if she didn't leave, her presence would put Zero Wing in considerable danger. Lately, she had been frustrated and hesitant due to this dilemma. Wonder, you know that you don't have much time left. Yen Zioyan isn't the only one with the full support of a superpower. Do you think you defeat your competition without any help? Cold Memory asked. Silent Wonder fell silent. She didn't have anything she could say to that. If it were a simple competition of alchemy techniques, she was confident of emerging victorious, but it was a different story when the competition involved combat power and foundations. Wonder's identity? What do you mean? Shifeng asked, confused. He thought he was relatively familiar with Silent Wonder's story. She had been one of the 10 great Grandmaster alchemists during his previous life and a lone ranger the various superpowers had desperately tried to recruit. However, he hadn't heard anything regarding a powerful background or special identity outside of her Grandmaster rank. You've heard of the Azure Chamber of Commerce, correct? Cold Memory asked. Shifeng nodded. Very few people in the virtual gaming world hadn't heard of the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Although it couldn't compare to the Secret Chamber of Commerce, it was one of the top 10 chambers in the virtual gaming world. It had far more resources and wealth than any ordinary superpower. However, even during Shifeng's previous life, the Azure Chamber of Commerce's focus had been on the Western continent. It had rarely bothered with anything on the Eastern continent. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Wonder is the heiress to one of the two families that control the Azure Chamber of Commerce. To earn the right to rule Azure, the family's heirs periodically compete. Only, none of the heirs are allowed to use Azure's strength. There are only a few days left before the next competition, and Zhou Xian, one of Wonder's competitors, has joined Dark Pursuit and receives the guild's full support, Cold Memory truthfully explained. Smiling, she continued, Now, guild leader Black Flame, do you still think it's best that Wonder remains in Zero Wing? The Azure Chamber of Commerce's overall strength rivaled super guilds. Hence, the two main shareholders of Azure fought desperately to secure the right to rule the organization. If Silent Wonder lost, Xianxia and the others, her competitors, would definitely try to squash Zero Wing to prevent Silent Wonder from becoming a problem in the future. Similarly, Silent Wonder's family would hold Zero Wing responsible. The guild would be the cause of their loss in such a vital competition after all. Silent Wonder's family wouldn't stop until they've vented their anger out on Zero Wing. As for winning the competition with Zero Wing's support, that was impossible. Xianxia had the full support of a super guild. The best solution was for Silent Wonder to join Dark Pursuit as well. This way she could compete with Xianxia on equal terms, and Dark Pursuit wouldn't try to interfere with Silent Wonder's development. If other powers attempted to interfere, Dark Pursuit would ensure that they bit off more than they could chew. Chapter 2354, Mental Strengthening, What Memory Says is True, Guild Leader Black Flame, South Dream added, afraid that Shifeng would misunderstand their intentions. God's domain is becoming more popular across the globe. More corporations have been investing in the game as well, and as a result, Azure's two main shareholders have become desperate to win the organization's right to rule. Azure might focus its development on the Western continent, but it still had a lot of influence among the Eastern continent's empires. If either of the shareholders decide to target Zero Wing, your guild's development will suffer. Zero Wing might be very powerful, but it wasn't a superpower like the Azure Chamber of Commerce. This was especially true now that the Western and Eastern continents had more contact. Many superpowers were trying to join Azure. If Azure asked those superpowers to move against Zero Wing as a condition for joining, many of them would be more than willing to fulfill that request. At that time, Zero Wing's position would become very precarious. If Zero Wing did not wish to suffer, it had to allow Silent Wonder to leave. Not only would she have more access to resources, but Xianxia wouldn't be able to monopolize Dark Pursuit's strength either. As for Zero Wing, it would avoid Azure's wrath and receive help from Dark Pursuit. Silent Wonder gave Shifeng an apologetic look. She knew how crazy her family was about this competition. If the two families hadn't kept such a close eye on each other, they would have likely resorted to underhanded means to win the upcoming competition. She also knew that if her family lost, they'd go ballistic. They would absolutely vent their anger out on Zero Wing. Meanwhile, Zero Wing wasn't in the best of positions at the moment. If more superpowers tried to interfere, the guild's days would be numbered. Thank you for informing me of the situation. If there is nothing else you'd wish to discuss, I'll consider our meeting over now. I still have other matters I need to attend to, Shifeng calmly replied. What are you trying to say, Guild Leader Black Flame? Cold Memory stared at the swordsman, confused. For a moment she even wondered if Shifeng knew anything about the Azure Chamber of Commerce or Dark Pursuit. If he made the wrong decision now, Zero Wing would encounter enough trouble to ensure the guild's destruction. I'm already aware of Wonder's situation. If another guild can support her, so can Zero Wing, Shifeng said, chuckling as he replied to Cold Memory. Shifeng was far more familiar with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's strength than Cold Memory. It was one of the top 10 chambers of commerce in the virtual gaming world, after all. It was as powerful as super guilds. Ordinary superpowers simply couldn't compare. Needless to say, Shifeng knew about Dark Pursuit as well. Not only was Dark Pursuit a veteran super guild, but it had also annihilated 2 superpowers after the planar passage's activation during his previous life. If Zero Wing had encountered this situation some weeks ago, he would have seriously considered the matter. However, that was unnecessary now. Guild leader. Silent Wonder was incredibly touched by Shifeng's statement. She became even more resolved to remain in Zero Wing. This guy must be insane. Does he really think he can help Silent Wonder with Zero Wing's resources? The response rendered Cold Memory speechless. Azure's internal competition wasn't just a competition of alchemy standards. It was also a competition of strength. Zero Wing's resources couldn't even compare to an ordinary superpowers, much less Dark Pursuits. Memory, I've decided. I want to stay in Zero Wing. Even if Xianxia has Dark Pursuit's full support with the research workshop, my defeat isn't guaranteed, Silent Wonder decided, turning to look Cold Memory in the eyes. Suit yourself. I don't care anymore. You better not regret this later. Cold Memory exclaimed, annoyed. She had never thought Silent Wonder would be confident of defeating Xianxia. Xianxia had access to the intermediate meditation room every day and was only one step away from becoming an advanced master alchemist. Dark Pursuit planned to invest all of its available resources in her training to secure its first advanced master alchemist as well. On the other hand, Zero Wing's only advantage was its research workshop. The workshop might help Silent Wonder become an advanced master alchemist, but she wasn't likely to complete her promotion before the internal competition. The research workshop only provided hints. Players still had to research their designs or recipes and materials and experiment. It wasn't possible to reach advanced master rank quickly, and this wasn't just a competition involving alchemy standards. Had Silent Wonder joined Dark Pursuit, she would have more or less had a chance at victory, but since she had decided to remain in Zero Wing, she had practically no hope. Cold Memory and South Dream then left the reception room. For Zero Wing's arrogance and Silent Wonder's blind faith, she could already predict the outcome that awaited them. Memory, are you really done caring about this? South Dream asked. I don't have anything else that could persuade Wonder. Our only other choice is to recruit Moon Silk for Dark Pursuit. I didn't want to approach her, but her strength is unquestionable. If Moon Silk wins, Silent Wonder can maintain her position in the family for the most part, Cold Memory said as she shook her head in frustration. The competition between the 2 main families involved more than 2 people. 6 people would take part in total, 3 from each family. As long as one of the participants earned first place, the other 2 family members' performance wouldn't matter. The winner's family will still secure the right to rule the organization. Moon Silk was the most talented among the 3 participants from Silent Wonder's family. However, she was also the most quirky of the 3. Cold Memory had hoped to avoid approaching the woman. However, as things were now, they didn't have a choice if they wanted to help Silent Wonder's family win the competition. Moon Silk. Even South Dream shuddered at the mention of her name. However, after giving the matter some thought, he agreed with his companion. At least this option would increase their chances of victory. If Moon Silk won the competition, Silent Wonder's family wouldn't restrict her freedom over much. Following which, Cold Memory and South Dream quickly left White River City and made their way to the city Moon Silk resided in. Meanwhile, back in Candlelight's top-floor reception room, Shifeng pulled an ancient, sealed parchment from his bag once his guest had left. I'll leave this with you for now. I hope it will help you become an advanced master alchemist as quickly as possible. If you succeed, you'll have a much greater chance of winning your family's competition, Shifeng said as he carefully removed the seal and handed it to Silent Wonder. As Silent Wonder inspected the parchment, her eyes went wide in shock. Guild leader, how did you get this recipe? Silent Wonder's breathing grew somewhat labored as she stared at the recipe in her hands. What she held was no ordinary recipe. It was a peak master recipe for the Droplet of Life potion. Countless alchemists dreamed of getting their hands on this parchment to study and learn from it. The reason for this was because of the Water of Life. With the Water of Life, one could resurrect the dead. The potion contained an unimaginable amount of life force and served as one of the base materials to resurrect NPCs. Unfortunately, the water of life was too precious and more valuable than what money could buy. The droplet of life potion was a weakened version of the water of life. Although it couldn't resurrect NPCs, it could help NPCs recover from severe and permanent injuries. It was easy to imagine how valuable this recipe was. Most importantly, no one had even found an advanced master recipe yet, much less a peak master recipe. Alchemists that wanted to rise through the ranks needed to create new recipes, but to create a recipe suitable for their rank, they needed a lot of reference material. Without that, they wouldn't know where to start, which was why master recipes were so valuable in God's domain. However, at Silent Wonder's standard, basic master recipes were no longer useful. She'd need advanced master recipes. Unfortunately, she had never managed to locate an alchemical master recipe, and as a result she had been forced to explore and experiment by herself. The droplet of life recipe would definitely help her reach the advanced master alchemist rank. Rather than answer Silent Wonder's question, Shifeng asked, "Now that you have this recipe, how confident are you in completing your promotion?" The droplet of life recipe was incomparably precious and one of the most important recipes the Sunset King had dropped. It was only inferior to Grandmaster recipes. Shifeng had planned to offer it as a benefit for the guild's core members, allowing Candlelight's master alchemists time to study it. However, to help Silent Wonder reach advanced master rank as soon as possible, he decided to postpone those plans. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I'm afraid that I'm only 30% confident of reaching my promotion before the competition, Silent Wonder said helplessly after a moment of self-reflection. Becoming an advanced master alchemist wasn't easy, and even with the research workshop's assistance, she'd still need time to conduct her own research. 30%? After pondering for some time, Shifeng said, "It's a little off, but it should be enough." After saying so, Shifeng called up the Candlelight Trading Fin's system interface and chose to upgrade the shop in Blue Bay City to 3-star status. At the same time, he established a shared warehouse and sent the members there to transfer the Primal Void Stones. The various major powers would likely assume the best use of the Primal Void Stones was selling them to the Dark Forces for gold and resources, but they weren't aware of the stone's other function. Mental strengthening. Chapter 2355 Advanced Mana Set Equipment. 30% is enough? Silent Wonder was confused by Shifeng's statement. Based on his tone, he seemed very confident in her success in becoming an advanced master alchemist. Not only did she need enough proficiency points for her promotion, but she also had to create a new advanced master recipe. Unfortunately, creating an advanced master recipe was multiple times more difficult than creating a basic master recipe. It wasn't simply a problem of mixing materials. The process also required magic arrays, which tested her ability to manipulate mana. Resources and hints weren't enough for her to reach the advanced master alchemist rank. "I can't guarantee it, but if you have a 30% chance, we should be able to boost that to 80% within the remaining time," Shifeng said, chuckling. 80%? Silent Wonder repeated in a higher-pitched tone, giving Shifeng an incredulous look. Creating an advanced master alchemist was easier said than done. Even if the various superpowers alchemists generously offered her all of their research, she'd be lucky to increase her success rate by 10%. Yet Shifeng insisted that he could help raise her success rate by a whopping 50%. If God's Domain's various master alchemists heard this, they'd laugh at Shifeng for being an ignorant fool and a layman. However, Shifeng was no noob when it came to lifestyle classes. He was a bona fide intermediate master forger after all, an existence that stood at the apex of God's Domain's forging industry. He was also one of the first players to become a master lifestyle player in God's Domain. There were less than a handful of people who could claim they understood lifestyle classes better than Shifeng in the Candlelight Trading Firm. You'll understand when the time comes. For now, head to the research workshop and study the Droplet of Life recipe. If you can master that recipe, it'll definitely help you to create an advanced master recipe, Shifeng said, ending the conversation rather than elaborate. The secret regarding the Primal Void Stone was too important. If information about the stones leaked, it would cause a huge commotion in God's Domain. The advanced master rank was a huge threshold for lifestyle players. Over 90% of the master lifestyle players in Shifeng's previous life had been stuck at intermediate master rank due to the difficulty of the promotion. Those masters hadn't lacked techniques, but simply hadn't had the mental strength to succeed. Rising through the tiers was the easiest way for players to improve their mental fortitude. The higher a player's tier was, the stronger their mental strength would be, which was also why most of the top-tier lifestyle players of Shifeng's previous life had been high-tiered players as well. Silent Wonder was only a level 97, tier 2 player. She'd still need quite some time to reach level 100, not to mention complete her tier 3 promotion quest. Meanwhile, God's Domain had very few items that could improve a player's mental strength, and the Primal Void Stones were one of them. However, mainstream players in the past had only learned this secret after reaching level 160. When they had discovered it, the various superpowers had fought desperately to secure Primal Void Stones. From then on, Primal Void Stones hadn't been treated as a simple mana-gathering tool. They had become a strategic item to improve combat and lifestyle players' standards. Although the Primal Void Stones only improved a player's mental fortitude by 20% to 30%, it was a valuable boost. Players only received a slightly higher percentage when they reached a higher tier after all. If Silent Wonder didn't have any issues with her alchemy techniques, she should have no problems reaching advanced master rank as long as she had adequate mental strength. After sending Silent Wonder to the research workshop to study the Droplet of Life recipe and while he waited for the Primal Void Stones to become available in the shared warehouse, Shifeng began to select a few of Candlelight's other shops to promote to 3-star status. With White River City's Candlelight trading firm now a 4-star shop, he could upgrade 5 2-star shops to 3-star status, and after promoting Blue Bay City's shop he had 4 slots remaining. After much consideration he chose the shops in Dark Knight City, Black Dragon City, Apocalypse City and Twin Towers City. With 3-star shops in these cities, recruiting lifestyle players and collecting materials would be a lot more convenient. With 5 more 3-star shops, it wouldn't be long before Zero Wing's lifestyle operations would rival that of the various superpowers. Once it did, the Candlelight Chamber of Commerce would be strong enough to rival the superpowers' chambers. Zero Wing would no longer need to rely on Stone Forest City's temporary residences as bait to lure guilds into joining the Candlelight Chamber of Commerce. However, to give the Candlelight Chamber of Commerce a competitive edge and earn a fortune from it, it would need more than a lot of lifestyle players. Candlelight would also need a large variety of valuable, useful products. It seems it's time to research these forging designs, Shifeng thought as he glanced at the ancient, sealed parchments in his bag. Aside from weapons and materials, the Sunset King had dropped 14 designs and recipes, and every one of them was master rank. The most valuable of them was the Droplet of Life recipe, but following that were the 6 forging designs for an advanced mana set equipment. The Crimson Sunset. The Crimson Sunset set was only a Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment and couldn't compare to level 100 plus Dark Gold set equipment, but it was still far stronger than what current players had access to. As an advanced mana set equipment, players could also rely on the equipment up to level 120. Its basic attribute bonuses were just as significant as that of level 100 plus Fine Gold set equipment, and it would be more than enough for Tier 3 players to rely on until they reached Tier 4 at level 120. Shifeng then left the reception room and found an empty basic meditation room to start the Crimson Sunset's production. Initially he had wanted to give the designs to Melancholic Smile and the others, but since they were still busy with the Crimson Dragon flying ship's parts, they didn't have the spare time to forge the advanced mana set equipment. Moreover, unlike other master forgers, Shifeng no longer needed to create a new forging design to become an advanced master forger. He needed forging proficiency. Fortunately, crafting set equipment was the fastest way to earn proficiency points, especially if one crafted mana set equipment. Sure enough, a mana set equipment's production process is really complex. It's no wonder why only a few superpowers had managed to produce their own mana set equipment in the past. After reading through the Crimson Sunset design, Shifeng took in a deep breath. The Crimson Sunset was several times more complex than a pre-level 100 Dark Gold set equipment. The forging techniques were particularly demanding. Shifeng could only think of 3 master forgers in Candlelight that could handle the techniques. Most importantly, players would need incredible mastery of magic arrays. One would, at the very least, Need to be an advanced magician even to attempt drawing the necessary magic arrays. No other master forger in the trading firm was capable of drawing the Crimson Sunset's arrays. Even Shifeng had to spend 5 hours to learn them. Now that I've grasped the basics, it's time to start the actual production. However, the material cost is vicious. Any other guild would likely despair at the very idea of paying these costs. Shifeng revealed a bitter smile as he examined the required materials for the mana set equipment. The Crimson Sunset's main materials were mana stones and magic crystals. A single production attempt would cost 40 mana stones. If Shifeng hadn't been able to rely on the Philosopher's Stone, he'd only be limited to a few attempts. Even so, producing the Crimson Sunset would still cost him a lot of magic crystals. He was relieved that the guild had found a manatite vein. Otherwise, this design would simply be too expensive to use. Once Shifeng verified that he had everything he needed, he began to forge the mana set equipment. He would have to forge the Crimson Sunset's 6 parts simultaneously. It was so demanding on a player's mental strength that even if a weaker player learned the process, they wouldn't be able to use it. Fortunately, Shifeng's mental fortitude was already relatively high, and after his promotion to Tier 3, it had become even stronger. During his first attempt, his magic array's quality hadn't been high enough, and the process had failed before he had finished half of it. On his second attempt, due to physical imperfections, the system deemed his product a total failure. The results of his third attempt were nothing but scrap metal as well. In the end, Shifeng had failed 6 times in a row, losing enough materials to make his heart ache. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You please let me succeed this time. Shifeng prayed as he gritted his teeth. Nervously, Shifeng appraised the Crimson Sunset before him. If this attempt failed as well, he'd have to give up on the set. As Shifeng clicked the appraise button, the 6 pieces of crimson equipment on the stone table lit with a dazzling, colorful glow. At the same time, the room's mana flooded to the equipment pieces. System: Crimson Sunset has been successfully forged. Forging proficiency increased by 180 points. Obtained 1,200,000 EXP. System: Black Steel Insignia's effect triggered. Crimson Sunset's attributes increased. Chapter 2356. Primal Void Stone Room. The Crimson Sunset radiated such a colorful glow that it illuminated the entire meditation room. Its aura was just as intense as that of Great Lord-ranked monsters. The strengthening effect improved it so drastically. Shifeng read the Crimson Sunset statistics in shock. He was already overjoyed that he had successfully produced the advanced mana set equipment. He hadn't actually expected to trigger the Black Steel Insignia's effect as well. Now the Crimson Sunset's basic attributes could practically rival a Tier 3 mana set equipment. Mana equipment wasn't like ordinary equipment. It traded durability, which would continue to deplete with each use, in exchange for greater performance. Because of this, players could exhibit extraordinary strength with mana equipment. If a level 100 Tier 2 expert wore Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment, they could solo a level 100 High Lord. Normally, a Tier 2 expert couldn't even solo a level 100 Lord and would need a full party to take one down. This was why Shifeng was so determined to produce the Crimson Sunset. Zero Wing already had an adequate number of peak combatants, but when it came to lower-grade experts, the guild was no match for the various superpowers. If he could arm Zero Wing's core experts with the Crimson Sunset, their combat power would undergo a qualitative transformation, and they'd only be weaker than true Tier 3 experts. Now that he had the experience of producing the Crimson Sunset, Shifeng began to mass-produce the mana set equipment. His production success rate was still quite low, but one Crimson Sunset would instantly arm Zero Wing with a Tier 2 expert that had the combat power to rival peak experts. Not even the various superpowers were capable of accomplishing this feat. Furthermore, the Crimson Sunset would be immensely helpful to players when they challenged their Tier 3 promotion quests. Following which, Shifeng forged 22 Crimson Sunsets, only stopping when he received a message from Melancholic Smile. She had contacted him to inform him that the second batch of Primal Void Stones had been retrieved from the shared warehouse. Blue Bay City's members had also added the third batch to the shared warehouse. They're finally here. After reading Melancholic Smile's message, Shifeng decided to take a break from the Crimson Sunset's production for now. It took 24 hours to transfer items through the shared warehouse. Although the shared warehouse could only hold 200 primal void stones at a time, it was the most convenient method for transferring non-bag space items that Zero Wing had right now. If he had to rely on the Crimson Dragon flying ship, it would take more than 24 hours to receive a shipment from Blue Bay City. With 2 transfer cycles, White River City's Candlelight trading firm had 400 primal void stones in stock. Although 400 primal void stones were far from enough to construct a building, they'd be more than enough to build a small room. A small room might not be useful for combat players, but it would be for lifestyle players. They didn't need a lot of workspace after all. Shifeng then contacted Melancholic Smile and had her deliver the primal void stones to one of the small reception rooms on the top floor, and he began to modify the room. Shops in NPC cities had fixed layouts for their workshops, and players weren't allowed to modify them, but the reception rooms and offices were a different story. Since these rooms didn't have a specific function, players could modify them as they wished. To protect the primal void stone's secret, Shifeng saw to the modifications himself. Fortunately, one didn't need to be an architect to complete the task. Finally, after more than a dozen hours of work, Shifeng had replaced the walls, ceiling and floor with primal void stones, spending 376 stones in total. If Sind Heart saw the room, he'd have a heart attack. If they had sold those stones, they would have earned nearly 20,000 gold. Even the various superpowers would find a 20,000 gold modification to a small reception room to be a stroke of madness. And yet Shifeng wasn't satisfied. He also set up a mana-gathering magic array within the room, increasing the room's mana density even further. Combined with the primal void stone's mana-gathering properties, the mana in the small reception room was only slightly less dense than in the research workshop. These primal void stones are amazing. This is only a small room, yet it can improve a player's mental strength by 20%. If I construct an entire building, I can likely increase that boost to 30%, Shifeng thought as he sensed the improvement to his mental fortitude. If he could train in such an environment, he might even be able to execute a perfect lightning flash, even if he were still at Tier 2. The primal void stones were far more effective than he had expected. Tools that could improve a player's mental strength by 10% in God's domain already sold for astronomical amounts of money. One might not even be able to exchange a fragmented legendary item for such a tool. However, a primal void stone room could improve a player's mental strength by 20%. Shifeng finally realized why the various superpowers in the past had reserved their primal void stone houses for their own use, refusing to rent them to outsiders. Once he was satisfied, Shifeng contacted Silent Wonder and requested her presence. Silent Wonder had a huge headache from trying to create her new potion, having reached a bottleneck. She wanted nothing more than to spend the 48-hour day in the research workshop, but upon receiving Shifeng's order, she had no choice but to set aside her research and begrudgingly visit the small reception room in question. Guild leader, this room. After a moment in the small reception room, she was stunned by the sensation of it. Silent Wonder hadn't felt anything in particular when she had first entered the room. She had merely felt a refreshing coolness spread throughout her body, but after 5 seconds she noticed that her mind was far clearer than before. In addition, her physical control and mana had increased substantially. It's not bad, right? Shifeng asked, chuckling at Silent Wonder's shocked expression. The research workshop can only provide a rough guideline. You'll have to figure out the details on your own. Meanwhile, this room will help improve your control. You can spend time here to learn the techniques and concepts you've struggled with. With this environment, your chances of creating a new recipe should rise to 70% or 80%, right? The room is simply magical. Forget 80%. I'm sure I can create a new recipe if I work in here for the next 4 or 5 days. Silent Wonder excitedly and confidently exclaimed. While in this room, she could finally understand some of the aspects of the droplet of life recipe that had confused her. Moreover, the advanced magic arrays she had struggled with no longer seemed difficult. She was 90% sure that she could draw the necessary arrays to produce the droplet of life now. Good then. I'll have Melancholic send some alchemy tools up in a moment. If you come across anything you can't figure out in the research workshop, you can come here to figure it out, Shifeng said, not surprised in the least by Silent Wonder's declaration. A room of primal void stones would even be useful to Grandmaster lifestyle players, not to mention master lifestyle players. With Silent Wonder's talents, it'd be a joke if she couldn't become an advanced master alchemist with the help of this room. Once she had everything she needed, Shifeng stopped bothering Silent Wonder and returned to his own basic meditation room to continue his work with the Crimson Sunset Mana set equipment. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. With access to the Primal Void Stone rooms, Silent Wonder completed her promotion to Advanced Master rank in 4 days, becoming the first Advanced Master lifestyle player in the Candlelight trading firm. Meanwhile, Shifeng worked arduously for 5 straight days, leveling up from 103 to 104. His leveling speed was absurdly fast for someone of his level. He had also produced 86 Crimson Sunsets, although he had blown through all of Zero Wing's stockpiled magic crystals. While he'd been busy, Fire Dance, Gentle Snow, Violet Cloud, and Aqua Rose had returned from the Tower of 4 Gods, all 4 now at level 100. Shifeng instructed the 4 women to learn a bronze combat technique using the ocean barrier stones before he sent them off to challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests. Guild Leader, Azure's people have arrived. They say they're here to take me to the competition venue. Silent Wonder suddenly contacted Shifeng to inform him. They're here. Shifeng set his tools down. Nodding, he continued, I'll go with you. Chapter 2357 Equipment upgraded. You're coming too, Guild Leader? Silent Wonder asked, a hint of excitement in her voice. Shifeng was Zero Wing's guild leader. He had many things he needed to do every day. She had thought the guild would, at most, send a guild elder or vice-guild leader as a show of support for the Azure Chamber of Commerce's competition. She had never thought Shifeng would want to make the trip himself. Ooh. Azure has the ability to travel between God's domain's main continents. This is a good opportunity to investigate the situation on the western continent, Shifeng said, nodding. The planar passage's activation provided the major powers an opportunity to obtain more resources, but compared to what one could gain from another main continent, the other worlds offered scrap. This was especially true regarding the main continent's merchandise. Reselling such items could offer significant profits. This was also why so many superpowers were so desperate to join the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Azure was one of the few powers in God's domain with the ability to travel between the main continents. Although Zero Wing had no chance of joining Azure right now, it wouldn't hurt to use this competition to get a glimpse of the western continent. Finding a way to travel between the eastern and western continents might be an issue for others, but it was a simple matter for Shifeng. Zero Wing severely lacked funds for many of the guild's needs, especially the development of Zero Wing's territory in the Cold Spring Canyon. As soon as the guild began to develop the area, it would become a bottomless pit that endlessly devoured coins and resources. If Zero Wing relied on Candlelight's current income, it would take a very long time to develop the territory properly. The best solution Shifeng could come up with was to resell Zero Wing's merchandise on the western continent. Not only would this generate income far more quickly, but it would also generate enough to drive any superpower mad with envy. I'll take care of the necessary preparations then. Naturally, Silent Wonder was overjoyed that Shifeng wanted to attend the competition with her, and she immediately left to prepare what she'd need for the competition. Oh right. Come see me later and collect some equipment, Shifeng said. Since Silent Wonder had become an advanced master alchemist, she could produce items with far more speed than before, and as a result her leveling speed had substantially increased. In fact, she had already reached level 99. However, her equipment was still average at best. She wasn't even wearing full level 95 equipment. Although Azure's internal competition was a personal affair, Silent Wonder was still a member of Zero Wing. If the Chamber's representatives saw her current equipment, Zero Wing would become a laughingstock. Equipment. When Silent Wonder took a look at her own equipment, she was a little ashamed. Her equipment was pretty shabby. More than half of the items she wore was level 90 equipment, and the few level 95 pieces she had were only secret silver rank. Her equipment might be excellent for ordinary expert players, but she was Candlelight's chief alchemist. For someone of her status, equipment of such quality was like wearing a pauper's rags. After all, the items in Zero Wing's guild warehouse were available to Candlelight's lifestyle players as well. However, to increase her development as an alchemist, She had spent almost all of her GCPs on rare materials. Once Silent Wonder collected her alchemy tools and materials, she promptly made her way to the basic meditation room Shifeng occupied. As she entered the room, Shifeng gestured to the strengthened crimson sunset on the stone table and said, "Here. Give this a try." Since the crimson sunset was basically made of mana stones and magic crystals, it wasn't restricted to a particular class. Once equipped, the set's attributes would automatically adjust to its wearer. This was one of the benefits of mana set equipment. A Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment? Silent Wonder was stunned after inspecting the crimson sunset. She wasn't a stranger to mana set equipment. Some of Zero Wings members had used such items before, and many of the Candlelight's members had watched on with envy. Mana set equipment was essentially equipment made of pure mana. When equipped, it would increase the mana density around the player, calming and clearing their mind. However, mana set equipment was incredibly rare. The guild didn't have enough to allow its members to purchase it with GCPs. And yet Shifeng was giving her her own mana set equipment. Moreover, this wasn't any ordinary mana set equipment. It was a 6-piece Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment. At this stage of the game, not even the various superpowers likely had such a set. Guild leader, this is too precious. I'm only an alchemist. Giving this crimson sunset to me would be a waste. It'd be better if someone else in the guild used it, Silent Wonder said, refusing Shifeng's generosity. If Shifeng had merely offered her level 95 dark gold equipment, it wouldn't be a major issue since it wouldn't be helpful for very long, but that wasn't the case for the crimson sunset. A player could rely on the crimson sunset until they reached level 120. A lifestyle player like her wouldn't be able to make full use of the set equipment. You're our guild's chief alchemist. I can afford to give you such equipment, Shifeng said, chuckling. He then pointed to the pile of equipment in a corner of the room and continued, "Moreover, our guild has plenty of these sets." Plenty. At first Silent Wonder was confused, but when she turned to look where Shifeng had pointed, she gaped in shock. More than 20 sets of equipment sat in a pile on a massive stone table in the corner of the room. Every one of those sets looked just like the crimson sunset before her. "Alright, hurry up and equip it. If we waste any more time, Azure's people will likely grow impatient," Shifeng reminded her when he saw her in a daze. Suddenly, Silent Wonder realized that she didn't understand her guild as well as she had thought. First, he had handed her the droplet of life recipe, and then Shifeng had shown her that strange reception room. Now she learned that the guild had a pile of Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment. However, Silent Wonder didn't give the matter much thought. Since Shifeng insisted, she stopped hesitating and equipped the crimson sunset he offered. In seconds, Silent Wonder transformed from a cold, workaholic beauty into a charming, graceful witch surrounded by a layer of dense mana. The crimson robes radiated a faint, bloody mist that gave Silent Wonder a wicked feeling. Wearing the crimson sunset, she looked like a completely different person. Once they were ready, Shifeng and Silent Wonder quickly made their way to White River City's teleportation hall. After arriving at the teleportation hall, they headed toward one of the advanced restaurants located on the second floor. As they entered the restaurant, a level 100 Guardian Knight moved forward to greet Silent Wonder. He looked to be in his early 30s and wore 4 pieces of epic equipment. The Guardian Knight's weakest piece of equipment was even level 95 fine gold rank. Every one of the man's movements seemed natural and weightless. From what Shifeng could tell, this Guardian Knight should only be slightly weaker than Yan Tianqing. "Long time no see, second miss," the Guardian Knight respectfully greeted Silent Wonder. "Cloud, why are you here?" Silent Wonder was a little surprised to see this Guardian Knight, Cloud Hunter. "I thought you've been managing one of the branch guild on the Western continent. Has something happened to it?" "The family's branch guild is fine. The old master was simply worried that you might encounter some problems during your trip, so he sent me to escort you," Cloud Hunter said, shaking his head. He then turned to Shifeng, who stood behind Silent Wonder, and said, "However, it seems you would have been safe without me. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You grandpa is being too cautious. They wouldn't dare move against me during such a crucial time," Silent Wonder said, not feeling surprised by the arrangement in the least. In a slightly prideful tone she continued, "Allow me to introduce you. This is my guild leader, Black Flame. Not only is he an intermediate master forger, But he's also Star Moon Kingdom's #1 expert. He's even slain Warblood's commander. If those people dare to attack, they'll find that they've only made a one-way trip. The old master simply wants to ensure your safety. After all, the boundary space we're heading to is the Dark Hills. Azure has stationed some people in the area, but it won't stop anyone with ill intentions, Cloud Hunter said. I understand. Let's set out then. Silent Wonder nodded. She understood how special an area the Dark Hills was, but Shifeng was a Tier 3 player. Anyone that tried to ambush them would be digging their own grave. Cloud Hunter said nothing more after witnessing Silent Wonder's nonchalant attitude. His task was simply to protect her. Following which he led Silent Wonder and Shifeng to the Fire Dragon Empire. Chapter 2358, Boundary Space Fire Dragon Empire, Fire Dragon City. 20 flashes illuminated in the city's teleportation hall. As these flashes faded, players in standardized equipment emerged from the array. The moment these players appeared, they attracted envious, awed looks from many of the building's other occupants. Even the lowest level player in the group was level 99 and wore standardized level 95 dark gold set equipment. Standardized dark gold set equipment couldn't compare to ordinary set equipment of the same level and rank, but its basic attributes were on par with level 95 dark gold equipment. At this stage of the game, most ordinary experts were stuck at level 95 and would be lucky if they had a full set of level 95 secret silver equipment. Not even large guilds' core experts dared to dream of wearing level 95 dark gold equipment. The man leading the group was a level 100 player, and not only did he wear 5 pieces of epic equipment, but he also carried a crimson axe that radiated a chilling aura with an indiscernible rank. The weakest of this man's equipment was level 95 dark gold rank. Even among such high-leveled and excellently geared players, he was conspicuous. While the crowd wondered who these players were, 2 level 99 players with dense life auras approached the group. These two were none other than Cold Memory and South Dream, whom Shifeng had met earlier. "Oh, you actually made a trip here? If your grandfather finds out, he'll definitely scold you," South Dream said, pinching the bridge of his nose as he gazed at the level 100 berserker youth named Burning Owl. Burning Owl was one of South Dream's childhood friends. He was also one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's vice guild leaders. Apart from the fact that he had his family's support, Burning Owl had earned the position through his superior abilities and talents. Of course, this is an important day that decides our family's position. How could I miss it? Burning Owl said, chuckling. How did it go with my second sister? We tried, but Wonder intends to stay with Zero Wing. We have no choice but to ask Silk Moon to join Dark Pursuit, Cold Memory said, frustrated. However, Zero Wing's guild leader has promised to arm Wonder with the guild's full support. Zero Wing? Support my second sister? Burning Owl could not help but frown. Zero Wing really knows how to take advantage of people. Are they planning on relying on my second sister's identity to claim benefits from Azure? Second sister is too gullible. The Azure Chamber of Commerce's influence stretched across both of God's domain's main continents. Even the various superpowers desperately fought to join the chamber. As for his second sister, she was a free spirit that never cared about the family's matters. Unlike her, Burning Owl constantly managed many of Azure's affairs, which meant he had to deal with the powers that continued to seek a place with Azure. I am impressed by Zero Wing's ability to nurture lifestyle players. I'm confident that Wonder will perform well in the competition, South Dream added. Hopefully that's the case, but if Zero Wing's guild leader tries to take advantage of my second sister, I'll show him the power of my Heaven Piercer team, Burning Owl said, nodding as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Neither Cold Memory nor South Dream offered a response. The Heaven Piercer team Burning Owl controlled was certainly powerful. It might not have a lot of members, less than 50 in total, but every member was an expert among experts in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Even the weakest member could rival peak experts. If these players split up and targeted a guild, even as a Tier 3 Sword King, Shifeng would find them difficult to deal with. Meanwhile, Shifeng and his 2 companions reached a large forest's edge on their mounts a short distance away from the Fire Dragon Empire. A gigantic magic array enveloped the forest, and a massive spatial tear was faintly visible in the sky. It was as if this entire forest were located within the spatial tear. The only way to enter or leave this forest was through the massive steel checkpoint. This was the Dark Hills, a famous boundary space among the neighboring empires and kingdoms. It was also a well-known trade hub between the nearby countries. Although the Dark Hills was a trade hub, it was not open to individual players or ordinary powers. Only the various major powers from the neighboring kingdoms and empires had access. When they needed to find precious materials, they usually came here. All trades in the Dark Hills were done through a bartering system. There were also large-scale player auctions from time to time, in which incomparably precious items would be sold. Most importantly, the Azure Chamber of Commerce controlled the Dark Hills. Occasionally, Azure would sell items that could only be found on the Western continent, which were very attractive to the various major powers. Azure's presence was the reason that the Dark Hills had become such a famous trade hub. A large number of players stood in line for the checkpoint, with many of them driving carriages filled with non-bag space items. They were all looking to trade their items in the Dark Hills. Due to Azure's forces at the checkpoint, none of these players dared to make a fuss as they waited. The Chamber of Commerce had stationed all sorts of war weapons and magic arrays at the checkpoint as well to secure its rule over the area, and a small army of experts had garrisoned in the Dark Hills. Not even an army of tens of thousands of experts could shake Azure's rule in the Dark Hills, much less a small team. After arriving, Shifeng's group quietly stood in line, waiting to enter the Dark Hills. It was a dozen minutes or so before they reached the steel gate, reinforced by a magic array. "Second Miss, Guild Leader Black Flame, please wait here for a moment. I'll handle the entry procedures," Cloud Hunter said before approaching the Azure members stationed at the gate. "You and Second Miss can go in," the robust man at the gate said after examining Cloud Hunter's proof of identity. He then pointed to Shifeng and said, "He must wait out here for now." "Why? My guild leader is coming with us," Silent Wonder explained. "This is a very important day. To maintain the peace, outsiders aren't allowed on the premises. However, since he is your companion, Second Miss, I'll make this easier, but he'll still have to undergo an inspection before he can enter," the robust man decided, chuckling. "Why aren't your men inspecting them then?" Silent Wonder demanded as she gestured to a group of players that walked through the gate without an inspection. None of those players were members of the Azure Chamber of Commerce. They are from the Fire Dragon Empire's various superpowers and Azure's esteemed guests. "They are different," the robust man replied. "You better not go overboard, brute. Zero Wings Guild Leader is our Second Miss's esteemed guest," Cloud Hunter coldly informed the robust man, Prideful Brute. Although Prideful Brute was one of Azure's peak experts, he wasn't a member of Silent Wonder's family. Even a fool could tell that he was trying to cause trouble to humiliate Silent Wonder. "Didn't I say that he can go in as long as he allows us to inspect him?" Prideful Brute said, grinning at Cloud Hunter. "What? You want to start a fight here?" With Prideful Brute's question, the 40 heavy crossbows on the wall turned to aim at Cloud Hunter, and two of Prideful Brute's companions stepped forward. Both players were Azure experts as well, and they wore the same battle array set equipment as Prideful Brute. When they activated their battle array, they'd be just as powerful as Cloud Hunter overall. That was the reason that Prideful Brute dared to act so arrogantly before Cloud Hunter. Prideful Brute's attitude even infuriated Silent Wonder. She wanted nothing more than to teach the man a lesson. Shifeng was Zero Wings Guild Leader. If he had to be inspected before he'd be allowed into the Dark Hills, it would be embarrassing for her guild. "Don't do it, Second Mississippi. If you take action, you'll play right into his hands," Cloud Hunter quickly advised his charge when he sensed Silent Wonder's rage. "He has full control over this area. He has the authorization to suppress you if you attack, even if you are one of the Chamber's vice guild leaders." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The Dark Hills wasn't an ordinary location. It was an important source of income for the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Hence, the Chamber's security of this area was of the utmost importance. As the checkpoints manager, Prideful Brute had the authorization to attack anyone who wasn't Azure's guild leader or a Grand Elder if they caused trouble. If Silent Wonder caused a scene and died as a result, her maternal grandfather wouldn't be able to object. "It seems you're not that dumb after all. This is one of Azure's most important territories. Do you really think your family has full say in Azure?" Prideful brute said, sneering silent wonder. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a sword light startled everyone. The attack was so fast that by the time players had reacted, it had already sliced through Prideful Brute's throat. As the sword light faded, Prideful Brute lost all of his HP and collapsed powerlessly to the ground. Everyone that had seen the attack spun toward its origin. The attacker was none other than Silent Wonder's guest Xianxia. Chapter 2359, Unfortunate Death. Prideful Brute died. How dare he? Everyone stared at Xianxia in shock. The players from the various superpowers were especially stunned. Azure was a large-scale chamber of commerce with close to 100 years of history in the virtual gaming world. It was no weaker than a super guild. Azure was even capable of operating on both the western and eastern continents in God's domain, which was why the various superpowers sought to become a member. The Dark Hills was one of Azure's important territories, and as such the chamber had stationed 4,000 experts at the checkpoint. It had also set up 40 heavy crossbows and 6 basic mana pulse cannons on the checkpoint's walls. All sorts of magic arrays protected the checkpoint as well. Even domain realm experts would have to behave themselves here. After watching Prideful Brute die, Cloud Hunter was utterly stupefied. He simply couldn't understand why Xianxia had been so impulsive. The several cloaked players that Prideful Brute had respectfully welcomed into the Dark Hills earlier jerked to a halt, watching Xianxia curiously. That guy must be crazy, Big Sis Jade. He actually dared to attack someone here. I doubt even the Long family's second miss can save him now, a blue-clad assassin youth said. Although the Long family was one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's main shareholders, Silent Wonder didn't have a particular position or authority in the chamber. She could only rely on the Long family's old man for help. Prideful Brute, on the other hand, was one of Azure's upper echelons. Silent Wonder was lucky that he had shown her any respect. Now that the situation had devolved, Prideful Brute's faction wouldn't let this matter rest unless the Long family's old man made a personal appearance. Furthermore, magic arrays had been set up all over the Dark Hills checkpoint. Not only was all teleportation prohibited, but if Azure activated a magic barrier, Xianxia wouldn't have any hope of escaping physically. He wouldn't get away with a single death either. He's courageous, but it's a pity that his actions will only result in his death. He simply doesn't understand how strong superpowers are, the female berserker named Jade Bamboo said, a hint of admiration flashing in her eyes as she gazed at Xianxia. However, she quickly turned away from him to look at the refined middle-aged man above the checkpoint's gate. This middle-aged man was Hermit, one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's old monsters and the Dark Hills protector. He ranked among the top of the Fire Dragon Empire's players. A domain realm expert wouldn't even have a chance to escape with their life from someone like Hermit, much less defeat the man. She suspected only the 2 Vice Alliance Masters or the Alliance Master from her Adventurer Alliance would have any hope of surviving a fight against Hermit. While Jade Bamboo watched, Hermit jumped down from the wall, landing before Xianxia's group. As he did, he earned horrified looks from the various superpowers experts. They looked as if they had seen a ghost. Even Cloud Hunter watched the older man seriously. Elder Hermit, please don't misunderstand. This isn't what it looks like. Cloud Hunter hurriedly explained. If he had only had to face the checkpoint's war weapons and various experts, he would have been confident of helping Xianxia escape. But now that Hermit was involved, the situation had changed. Hermit wasn't allied with either of the 2 families, but he was Azure's secret enforcer. He had assassinated countless peak and apex experts that had wished to harm the Azure Chamber of Commerce. In contrast to the visiting players, the several peak experts that guarded the checkpoint couldn't help but grin when Hermit appeared. Those people have crap luck. I hadn't thought that Elder Hermit would get involved. Not even Old Man Long can help that guy now, not to mention Silent Wonder. Elder Hermit is famous for being a stickler for the chamber's rules. Initially, they hadn't been particularly confident of going up against Xianxia. After all, Xianxia had Cloud Hunter with him, who was one of Azure's apex experts and one of the outstanding talents among the organization's younger generation. They could not afford to kill Cloud Hunter without a good enough reason. If Cloud Hunter intended to help Xianxia escape, the swordsman was likely to get away. However, they no longer had to worry about that problem. Hermit was one of the strongest players in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. He'd have no problems killing Cloud Hunter, much less suppress the youth. If Hermit wanted someone dead, very few would survive against him. As Hermit slowly approached Shifeng's group, another group of cloaked players who watched from afar began to panic. How? Why is Hermit here? Burning Owl paled when he saw the middle-aged man. Doesn't he normally patrol inside the Dark Hills? Burning Owl had been surprised to see Shifeng abruptly attack and slay Prideful Brute, but he was actually quite pleased to watch the man die. As a result, his opinion of Shifeng significantly improved. As such, he had intended to lend a helping hand, but now that Hermit had arrived, this problem had become far worse. Even Burning Owl was afraid of the older man, and Hermit was one of the guild's grand elders. Hermit wouldn't back down out of respect even if he were one of Azure's vice guild leaders. While Burning Owl considered ignoring the repercussions to save Shifeng, Hermit appeared before the swordsman in question and extended a hand. Greetings, guild leader Black Flame. I am Hermit, the Dark Hills protector, Hermit said, smiling at Shifeng. I've been hearing of you for some time now, but I hadn't expected to meet you here today, guild leader Black Flame. Both Azure's members and the various superpowers experts gaped in shock when they heard Hermit's greeting. What's going on? Jade Bamboo stared with wide eyes. Everyone in the Fire Dragon Empire had heard of Hermit, especially the various superpowers experts. They all treated Hermit like the Grim Reaper. The man was known for his indifferent expression, and even when he had stood before her Adventurer Alliance's Alliance Master, he had treated her coldly. Now, however, Hermit welcomed Shifeng with a smile. It was unbelievable. Even Cloud Hunter and Burning Owl, who were both quite familiar with the middle-aged man, were utterly flabbergasted, their eyes nearly falling from their sockets. Was this really the Hermit they knew? Even stranger, Shifeng had just killed Prideful Brute in public. Prideful Brute had picked the fight, but he was still one of Azure's peak experts, and Shifeng had slain him as so many people watched. This would definitely damage Azure's reputation. Normally, Hermit wouldn't tolerate such an insult. Both Cloud Hunter and Burning Owl figured Shifeng would be lucky if Hermit decided to spare him. However, not only wasn't Hermit attacking the swordsman, but he had greeted Shifeng with a smile. You offer too much praise, Elder Hermit. I've heard a lot about you as well. I am here to accompany Silent Wonder and visit the Azure Chamber of Commerce, Shifeng politely responded. In reality, Hermit's behavior surprised even him. I see. The competition will begin soon. I'll have someone guide you and your group to the venue, Guild Leader Black Flame, Hermit said. He then instructed one of his subordinates to lead Shifeng's group through the gates. After watching the amicable conversation between Hermit and Shifeng, and Hermit's initiative to have someone lead Shifeng into the Dark Hills, everyone was utterly confused. Elder Hermit, that player hasn't been inspected. And he killed Prideful Brute. We cannot just let him get away with this. One of Azure's peak experts whispered to Hermit. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The other Azure experts nodded in agreement. However, they then felt an intense aura wash over them. It was from none other than Hermit himself. Fools. Hermit glared at the peak expert that had spoken. You think you can afford to provoke a Tier 3 player? It seems you lot have been slacking while I wasn't around. From now on, you and that Prideful Brute will spend your days in the combat training rooms. You are only allowed a break once you've passed those trials. After saying so, Hermit ignored the experts and left. Chapter 2360 Dark Hills. Shocked watching Hermit leave, the several peak experts from Azure were stunned. Tier 3. How is that possible? Nobody in our chamber is even confident of challenging their Tier 3 promotion quest. How can he have reached Tier 3 already? Tier 3 classes were no longer foreign to the various superpowers in God's domain, who knew very clearly how powerful a Tier 3 class was. It was not something that Tier 2 classes could go up against. Meanwhile, now that level 100 players had already appeared, the various superpowers had started researching the Tier 3 promotion quest. However, their findings indicated that the Tier 3 promotion quest was absurdly difficult. Ordinary experts could not hope to complete the quest as soon as they reached level 100. As for Peak and Apex experts, they faced an even greater challenge. After all, not only had they obtained excellent legacies, but they also had to challenge the highest difficulty promotion quest available in consideration of their future development. If they settled for a mediocre result, they would only be harming themselves in the long run. However, even the ordinary Tier 3 promotion quest already exceeded the expectations of the various superpowers because players had to travel to level 100 neutral maps to conduct their Tier 3 promotion quest. Level 100 neutral maps were not places that just any player could visit. Even a team of level 100 Tier 2 experts would face great danger when exploring a level 100 neutral map. Anyone capable of completing their Tier 3 promotion quest at this stage of the game undoubtedly had extraordinary strength. Needless to say, after completing their Tier 3 promotion quest, they would only have further improved their extraordinary strength. Brute died for nothing this time. That's right. He really dug his grave this time. Let alone Brute, even if Black Flame killed one of the chamber's elders, the chamber would most likely still ignore the matter. If what Hermit said was indeed true, then Prideful Brute's attempt to use Sure Feng to make trouble for Silent Wonder was simply suicidal. After all, the Azure Chamber of Commerce didn't have a single Tier 3 player right now. If a Tier 3 player wanted to do something against Azure's members out in the fields, particularly in level 100 neutral chamber, would be absolutely powerless to do anything about it. To avoid such an outcome, the chamber naturally wouldn't retaliate against Sure Feng just because he responded aggressively to Prideful Brute's provocation. As for the spectating crowd, when they saw Hermit berating Azure's peak experts, their jaws dropped even more than before. They simply could not wrap their minds around what had just happened. Who is that Black Flame? Black Flame had killed Azure's Prideful Brute, yet not only did Hermit not react in rage, but he even berated his own people. Jade Bamboo's eyes roiled with confusion as she gazed at Azure's peak experts. Although Hermit had spoken to those peak experts through a team chat, which prevented her from hearing what he said, she could still see his behavior and sense the aura he exuded, particularly his sudden burst of killing intent. That dense killing intent was something that made even an apex expert like herself shudder in fear. Moreover, she could tell that Hermit's killing intent wasn't directed at the departing Sure Feng, but at the several peak experts before him. From this, one could tell that the behavior of Prideful Brute and the other experts of Azure had enraged Hermit. At the same time, it was also obvious that Hermit was afraid of Sure Feng. Hermit was one of the top 10 experts of the Fire Dragon Empire, yet he actually appeared fearful of another player right now. This was simply unbelievable. It's over just like that? At this moment, Burning Owl, who stood a short distance away from the checkpoint, could not help his stupefaction when he saw Hermit walking away. He could not understand what had just happened. However, Cold Memory and South Dream beside him were not the least bit surprised by Hermit's response to Sure Feng's aggression. The fact that Sure Feng was now a Tier 3 player was still a secret. After the two of them found out about this, they had immediately reported the matter to their Vice Guild leader. Meanwhile, their Vice Guild leader had promptly issued a gag order on this secret. Although the two of them hadn't told anybody else, with Azure's discerning intelligence department, Hermit must have obtained word of it. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have let this matter rest so easily. After Sure Feng and his companions entered the Dark Hills, they immediately felt a pleasant sensation enveloping their spirits. The Dark Hills was located within a sealed space. Not only was the mana density here considerably higher than that of the outside world, but there were also multiple teleportation gates to the cities of neutral races, which allowed human players to travel freely to those cities. Likewise, neutral players could teleport to the Dark Hills from their respective cities. Hence, the Dark Hills Demonstone Town became an excellent trade hub. The one downside was the ridiculously high cost of the teleportation gates. Each use cost 300 magic crystals, a price utterly beyond ordinary experts. Only major powers could tolerate it. Meanwhile, as Demonstone Town was only so large, in order to avoid overcrowding Azure, the power that had captured it had limited entry to members of the various major powers. However, even with this rule in place, Demonstone Town was still extremely crowded. One could see not only the experts of the Fire Dragon Empire's major powers but also many players belonging to various neutral races present. Many of these players were hawking their wares along the streets of the city. Some of the items were enough to tempt even Sure Feng. The Demonstone Auction House, which was located at the town center, was the liveliest place in the entire town. It's no wonder so many powers were trying to enter this place back then. Shi Feng sighed ruefully as he looked at the crowded auction house. Zero Wing City's auction house might be grand and majestic, but when comparing the quality of items available, Zero Wing City's auction house was leagues behind the Demonstone auction house. Every item sold in the Demonstone auction house was precious. One could buy even epic weapons and equipment here. Of course, as the Demonstone auction house only allowed bartering, it didn't matter even if players brought a ton of coins here. The only options players had were to trade using the requested items or to pay magic crystals. However, magic crystals were a strategic resource to the various major powers. Hence, most of the major powers that came here would only trade using the required items. Those that lacked the required items could only window shop to sate their desires. As for the auction house's second floor, the Azure Chamber of Commerce currently had full control over it. Only the members of invited superpowers were allowed entry there. The members of ordinary powers could only watch Azure's internal competition from the first floor hall. Under the lead of Hermit's subordinate Shi Feng's group entered the second floor unhindered. At this moment not only was the second floor hall seated with Azure's upper echelon, but there were also plenty of players belonging to the upper echelons of various superpowers. Azure's internal competition today would decide whether the Long family or the Duan family would rule over the chamber. Hence, the superpowers placed considerable importance on the competition today. After all, if the family they supported won, they would gain greater benefits from Azure. On the other hand, if the family they supported lost, their benefits would naturally decrease. When Shi Feng's group entered the venue, everyone's gaze promptly shifted to it. That person's black flame? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. How desperate is this guy trying to gain the Long family's favor? He actually dared to kill a member of the Duan family. Doesn't he know that the Duan family has much more influence than the Long family in the Fire Dragon Empire? He's used to playing tyrant in a kingdom. He is naturally short-sighted when it comes to the bigger world. I heard that Giant's Heart has plenty of partnerships with the Duan family. This time, the Duan family has even managed to get Vice Guild leader White Autumn to visit. I heard that White Autumn recently gained a god's blessing, and his strength is now off the charts. If the Duan family manages to get White Autumn to secretly take action, Zero Wing will be finished. At this point, the various superpowers members had already heard about what had occurred at the checkpoint. They had never imagined that Shi Feng would actually be foolish enough to kill the Duan family's prideful brute. Meanwhile, as these players were discussing quietly, another group of people entered the hall. The moment these people arrived, everyone's attention immediately turned toward them. This was because the newcomers were none other than the Azure Chamber of Commerce's Duan family. Chapter 2361, Gathering of Big Shots. The Duan family had not sent a lot of people to this competition, only a dozen or so. Their number was far fewer than that of the various superpowers. However, when the attendees present saw the pale white middle-aged man at the head of the group, they all revealed surprised expressions. The ice demon Duan Han. He actually came too. This is going to be interesting. The ice demon's combat standards are not the slightest bit inferior to Hermit's. In fact, he is even stronger than Hermit in a frontal confrontation. Moreover, unlike Hermit who maintains a neutral stance in Azure, Duan Han is famous for his partisanship. The faces of the various superpowers members shone with anticipation when they saw the man leading the Duan family's group. Duan Han was the strongest person of the Duan family's second generation. His position in Azure rivaled that of the assassin Hermit. He had been fighting in the Western continent all this time, and his fame over there surpassed even Hermit's. Although Duan Han was nicknamed the Ice Demon, his short temper was well known among the various superpowers. Meanwhile, after stepping into the hall, Duan Han did not head toward the VIP seats. Instead, he walked up to Shi Feng. The chilling aura he radiated making the various superpowers refinement realm experts shudder involuntarily. "You're that black flame that killed prideful brute at the checkpoint?" Duan Han asked coldly as he glared at Shi Feng. Upon hearing Duan Han's question, everyone present revealed looks that suggested they had expected such a situation to arise. Although they were currently inside the auction house and within Azure's territory, Duan Han would not care about etiquette. If Shi Feng gave him an unsatisfactory reply, Duan Hanshan would definitely take action. That's right. Do you have business with me? Shifeng nodded, not evading Duan Hanshan's question at all. His nonchalant reply also made it seem as if the killing intent Duan Hanshan radiated was non-existent. Upon hearing Shifeng's words, everyone present gasped involuntarily. Is this guy nuts? He's still trying to act tough at this point? A blue-clad assassin youth who was also in the second-floor hall stared at Shifeng in shock. Duan Hanshan was known for being an unstoppable killing machine over in the Western continent. This was why he was nicknamed Ice Demon. Even the guild leaders of the various superpowers had to show respect when meeting him. Shifeng, however, behaved as if he had nothing to do with this matter. He probably doesn't know about the Ice Demon. After all, Zero Wing is developing in a small kingdom. It shouldn't know much about matters in the Western continent, said Jade Bamboo from beside the assassin youth. She too had been surprised at Shifeng's reply. However, now that he has spoken to Ice Demon that way, he's definitely doomed. Hermit maintained a neutral stance in the Azure Chamber of Commerce, so it was only normal for him to ignore the quarrels between the two main families and prioritize the chamber's benefits above all else. However, that was not the case for Duan Hanshan at all. Meanwhile, as soon as Shifeng finished speaking, Duan Hanshan's killing intent skyrocketed in intensity, putting a powerful pressure on the spectating crowd. Good. Young man, you're very brave. It seems that if I don't take some action in the Eastern continent, nobody will place the Azure Chamber of Commerce in their eyes in the future. Duan Hanshan exclaimed wrathfully. Mana started gathering around him, the ambient temperature plummeting. Black Flame is doomed now. At this moment, everyone understood that Duan Hanshan was thoroughly enraged. With this, even Silent Melody and Cloud Hunter would be powerless to save Black Flame. After all, quite a few of those standing behind Duan Hanshan were peak experts. They would have no problem holding Cloud Hunter back for a short period. However, just when everyone thought a battle would break out between Shifeng and Duan Hanshan, a deep and powerful voice echoed throughout the entire hall. Old Ice, are you planning on breaking the chamber's rules? When everyone turned to look at the origin of this voice, what they saw was a man in dark gray armor, who seemed to be in his early 50s. The aura this man radiated was not the slightest bit weaker than that of Duan Hanshan. It daunted the nearby refinement realm experts, deterring them from approaching him. Third uncle, why are you here? Silent Wonder asked in confusion when she saw this middle-aged man. This stalwart, middle-aged man was none other than Long Xianglong, one of the Long family's second-generation leaders. He was also one of Azure's Grand Elders and was Silent Wonder's third uncle. As Long Xianglong was addicted to improving his combat standards, he had not bothered himself with the chamber's matters in a very long time. Your father has some other matters to take care of and cannot attend this competition, so he asked me to come in his place, Long Xianglong said, a rare smile appearing on his face when he looked at Silent Wonder. He then turned to look at Duan Hanshan. Old Ice, Azure is holding an important competition here today. Are you still planning on taking action here? Or are you telling me that you've already forgotten about the chamber's rules? At Long Xianglong's words, Duan Hanshan's complexion darkened. Lunatic Long, I'll step back out of respect for you this time. However, if there is a next time, your people won't be as lucky, Duan Hanshan said. After glaring at Shifeng, he promptly turned around and left. Upon seeing this, Cloud Hunter breathed a deep sigh of relief. At the same time, he was also speechless at Shifeng's bravery. It was fortunate that Long Xianglong appeared. While attacking an invited guest within Azure's territory was indeed against Azure's rules, if Duan Hanshan was intent on taking action, even Cloud Hunter was not confident of stopping the Ice Demon. However, Long Xianglong was Duan Hanshan's equal in strength. Moreover, the rules were on Long Xianglong's side. If Duan Hanshan took action, he would definitely end up getting himself punished. After seeing Duan Hanshan leave, Long Xianglong turned his gaze away from the Ice Demon and walked up to Shifeng. Young man, you shouldn't act so impulsively next time. That old Ice Demon usually does whatever he wants, Long Xianglong admonished Shifeng slightly. Very quickly, however, he shifted his attention to Silent Wonder and said, Wonder, your grandfather has constantly been thinking about you. If not for the competition this time, he would have most likely called you back already. Once this competition is over, return with me. From the previous scene, Long Xianglong understood that Shi Feng was a very impulsive person. If he allowed his niece to remain in Zero Wing, it would only be a matter of time before disaster befell her. Return? Oh. I wish to stay in Zero Wing and continue my development there. In any case, Owl and Big Sis Silk are more than enough to handle the chamber's affairs. It doesn't matter whether I return or not, Silent Wonder said, shaking her head. Moreover, I'm developing very well. Nonsense. Your talents are second only to Silk Moon's. It might be fine if it were before, but after this competition, the struggle between the two main families will come to an end. Regardless of today's outcome, you will receive the chamber's full support. At that time, your improvement speed will definitely exceed your current rate, Long Xianglong said as he glared in exasperation at Silent Wonder. The Azure Chamber of Commerce's resources far surpassed that of ordinary superpowers. The future Silent Wonder could have in Azure would be many times better than if she remained in Zero Wing. In fact, remaining in Zero Wing would be a complete and utter waste of her talents. Moreover, the Long family's third generation still needed some strong pillars to support it. Simply relying on Burning Owl and Silk Moon wouldn't be enough. Third uncle, I've already decided. Moreover, I feel that Zero Wing is quite good. Stop trying to persuade me, Silent Wonder said, shaking her head. She was determined to stick to her decision. Just as Long Xianglong was about to launch another round of persuasion, a fresh group of players arrived, inducing gasps throughout the hall. This was because these players were members of Giant's Heart, a superpower that had thoroughly shaken the foundations of the Fire Dragon Empire and was capable of contending against the Super Guild Pride Empire. In fact, when comparing them purely in terms of naval prowess, Giant's Heart was superior to Pride Empire. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Nowadays, the various superpowers were placing extreme emphasis on their naval development. Since Giant's Heart possessed exceedingly great naval prowess, it had naturally become the target of partnership for many other superpowers. Meanwhile, the person leading Giant's Heart's group this time was none other than White Autumn, one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders, who was currently a megastar in the Fire Dragon Empire. At the same time, he was an existence that the various superpowers feared greatly because he had gained the sea god's blessing and possessed near unrivaled strength out at sea. During these past few days, White Autumn's existence alone had inflicted a lot of major losses on Pride Empire. When White Autumn entered the hall, the upper echelons of the various attending superpowers promptly surged forward to greet him. Azure's Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong even took the initiative to greet White Autumn in an attempt to bridge the distance between Giant's Heart and the Azure Chamber of Commerce. However, after making small talk with the other attendees for a short time, White Autumn suddenly walked up to Shi Feng. Greetings, Guild Leader Black Flame. I am White Autumn, one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders. I have heard a lot about you. I feel joyful that I finally get to meet you today. White Autumn greeted Shi Feng in a very friendly manner. Chapter 2362. She's an advanced master alchemist too? Silence. Shock. For a time, everyone in the hall was stunned. White Autumn was one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders as well as one of the strongest individuals in the Fire Dragon Empire. After he obtained the sea god's blessing, his strength had further skyrocketed. Nowadays he was an existence that even the guild leaders of the various superpowers wished to befriend. Now, however, White Autumn had actually taken the initiative to greet Shi Feng. Let alone the various superpowers' upper echelons, even Long Xianglong and Duan Hanshan could not help looking confused at this scene. In their opinion, Shi Feng was merely the guild leader of a pseudo-superpower. Even if Zero Wing had a lot of potential, it would still take a long time to become a superpower. Moreover, even if it eventually became a superpower, it still wouldn't warrant the attention of someone like White Autumn. Could that kid have some kind of relationship with Giant's Heart? Duan Hanshan guessed as he took in Shi Feng's calm expression. White Autumn was an existence that even the Duan family fervently wished to befriend. After all, Giant's Heart possessed extraordinary strength out at sea. In the future, when the various powers of the two main continents interacted more frequently, maritime trade would be unavoidable. So he still has such a backer. It's no wonder he paid no heed to Old Ice's questioning. Long Xianglong also started observing Shi Feng. He had never thought that Shi Feng would have such a connection. If Shi Feng had Giant's Heart supporting him with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's current attitude toward Giant's Heart, Duan Han definitely wouldn't dare to casually take action against Shi Feng. Although the ice demon was short-tempered, he was no fool. He knew when he should take action and when he should restrain himself. A short distance away, Jade Bamboo and the blue-clad assassin beside her were dazed for quite some time after seeing White Autumn greeting Shi Feng. When they snapped out of their daze, however, realization immediately dawned upon them. Previously they had been curious as to why Hermit had spared Shi Feng so easily. Looking at it now, Hermit must have known about the relationship between Shi Feng and Giant's Heart. Meanwhile, in response to White Autumn's greeting, Shi Feng simply nodded and said, "Vice Guild Leader White, you're too courteous." In reality, Shi Feng was also somewhat surprised that White Autumn had taken the initiative to greet him. After all, his current identity was Black Flame, not Yi Feng. Moreover, he had only helped White Autumn complete a quest and receive the Sea God's blessing. This amount of help should not warrant White Autumn's enthusiastic welcome. "Guild Leader Black Flame, I am not being courteous at all," White Autumn said, shaking his head. In a serious tone he continued, "Currently Giant's Heart has captured a relatively excellent town over at Dark Moon Lake, outside the Fire Dragon Empire. We wish to form a partnership with Zero Wing for this town. May I know if Guild Leader Black Flame is interested?" As soon as White Autumn finished speaking, gasps filled the hall once more. As for Long Xianglong and Duan Han, they both gaped in shock at this scene, their minds blank with disbelief. The area around Dark Moon Lake was a fat piece of meat that many powers were eyeing. Not only was it a neutral map, but it was even connected to the sea, a location without many developmental restrictions. Dark Moon Town had the potential to become a large-scale port city. At that time, the income generated from the city would be several times higher than that from NPC port cities. Hence, many of the Fire Dragon Empire's superpowers had tried to capture Dark Moon Town. In the end, however, it was White Autumn who succeeded. Moreover, he had even served Pride Empire a huge loss while doing so. Now, however, White Autumn wanted to form a partnership with Shi Feng. Dark Moon Town? Zero Wing is naturally very interested in this partnership, Shi Feng said, although he too was very surprised by White Autumn's suggestion. Shi Feng was relatively familiar with Dark Moon Town, or more precisely with Dark Moon City. In his previous life, Dark Moon City had been the largest player-operated port city in the vicinity of the Fire Dragon Empire. It had practically been the lifeline linking the Fire Dragon Empire with the sea. The prices of the shops and lands inside Dark Moon City had rivaled even those of imperial capitals. Back then, Giant's Heart ruled over Dark Moon City as well, and countless powers wished to form a partnership with the guild. Unfortunately for them, very few powers actually succeeded. During the time Shi Feng and White Autumn were hashing out the details of their partnership, everyone present was thoroughly stupefied, especially Duan Han and Long Xianglong. Shock and confusion filled their hearts. They even wondered if they were dreaming. Who is he? The Fire Dragon Empire's various superpowers were desperately seeking to cooperate with Giant's Heart on Dark Moon Town. Now, however, White Autumn was proposing a partnership with Shi Feng. This was simply absurd. Aside from Duan Han and Long Xianglong, Burning Owl and Cold Memories Group were also astonished by this scene. "Big sis, what kind of relationship does your guild have with Giant's Heart?" Burning Owl asked Silent Wonder. Even though Burning Owl had just arrived in the Eastern Continent, he knew about Dark Moon Town and its importance because one of his tasks in coming to the Eastern Continent this time was to negotiate a partnership with Giant's Heart regarding Dark Moon Town. However, there were simply too many superpowers eyeing Dark Moon Town, so even with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's backing, he was not particularly confident in his chances. Now, however, Cold Memory and South Dream were also eager to hear the answer to Burning Owl's question. They knew for a fact that Shi Feng was a Tier 3 player. However, they never considered that Zero Wing might still possess a foundation so powerful that it would warrant Giant's Heart's active solicitation. This was something even Dark Pursuit was incapable of accomplishing. I don't know either. Silent Wonder was also confused by this situation. Meanwhile, White Autumn himself paid no heed whatsoever to the shock everyone felt at his actions. He had personally witnessed Zero Wing's strength before, particularly its Crimson Dragon flying ship. The flying ship's performance exceeded his expectations entirely. Meanwhile, after seeing Shifeng now, he was even more certain that his decision to partner with Zero Wing was a wise one. Due to the sea god's blessing, White Autumn's perception toward life, aura and danger had improved significantly. When looking at Shifeng, he actually felt a deadly threat. Moreover, he could also tell that Shifeng's life aura was stronger than his own. The only explanation he could think of for this situation was that Shifeng was a Tier 3 player. In a period where none of the various superpowers possessed even one Tier 3 player, Zero Wing actually had two. He simply did not know what to say about this situation. Elder Han, this is going to be troublesome. Silent Wonder is a member of Zero Wing. Now that Zero Wing is proven to have a close relationship with Giant's Heart, the Long family will have an easier time partnering with Giant's Heart. A youth standing behind Duan Han said worriedly. What's there to worry about? So what if the Long family gets to partner with Giant's Heart? The most important point is who will get to rule Azure. Even if Zero Wing has a good relationship with Giant's Heart, that won't help the Long family or Silent Wonder win the upcoming competition, Duan Han retorted. Although the Long family's Silk Moon had also joined the famous Dark Pursuit as a lifestyle player, the time she joined Dark Pursuit was much shorter compared to Yan Xiaoqian's. Moreover, Yan Xiaoqian was almost as talented as Silk Moon. In such a situation, it would be impossible for Silk Moon to beat Yan Xiaoqian. While Duan Han was saying so, another group of players arrived in the second-floor hall. Similar to the arrival of Giant's Heart's group, the arrival of this group of players caused quite a commotion because it consisted of Dark Pursuit's members. Not only was the lowest-leveled player among them level 100, but the equipment they possessed was also something that could make even the upper echelons of the various superpowers envious. Of the dozen or so Dark Pursuit members that entered the hall, even the worst equipped among them had 3 pieces of epic equipment paired up with a 6-piece, level 95 Dark Gold set equipment. The most eye-catching among these players were undoubtedly the 2 heroic women walking in the lead. One of these women was Silk Moon, a cursemancer that possessed a mature and seductive charm. Silk Moon's appearance and figure were not the slightest bit inferior to Silent Wonder's. The other tall and graceful woman was Yan Xiaoqian. However, unlike Silk Moon's mature appearance, Yan Xiaoqian looked to be only 18 years old. Both women were actually geared in the Elven Light set, an 8-piece set of level 95 Dark Gold equipment, currently the best set equipment available for magical classes. The other pieces of equipment they wore were all epic rank. Amazing. Truly amazing. So this is Dark Pursuit's foundations? The Elven Light set. Dark Pursuit is really going all out for the competition this time. It seems the winner of this competition is going to be one of these two. I know, right? I heard that Dark Pursuit invested all its available resources into nurturing the two of them. Although the Long family's and Duan family's other heirs are excellent, these two are on a completely different level. The various superpowers' upper echelons were green with envy as they looked at Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian. The Elven Light set was currently the strongest Dark Gold set equipment available for magical class players. None of the various superpowers present had managed to complete even a single set yet. However, Dark Pursuit actually had 2. This was simply unbelievable. With the arrival of Dark Pursuit's group, all 6 representatives of the Long family and Duan family were finally present. A short moment later, an elegant middle-aged man walked to the center of the hall. This man was none other than Hermit, the manager of the Dark Hills. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for attending the Azure Chamber of Commerce's alchemy competition today, Hermit said. I believe everyone present has been waiting for quite some time now, so I'll dispense with the pleasantries. The competition this time will be very simple. Participants will have to produce as many meditation souls, an intermediate master potion, as possible within the given time frame. However, there is a precondition for those seeking to participate in the competition. They must be an intermediate master alchemist at the very minimum. Those who do not meet this requirement may not participate in the competition, so all participants, please show your alchemist insignias. Upon hearing the rules, the various spectators gasped involuntarily. Setting aside the meditation soul's production difficulty, just the condition of intermediate mastery would already leave countless alchemist players in despair. The requirements of this competition are really high. I bet that more than half of the participants will be disqualified because of this condition. Cold Memory was astonished when she heard Hermit's words. Nurturing an intermediate master alchemist was easier said than done. This was a task that even Dark Pursuit found difficult. Despite being very talented herself, Cold Memory was still a long way from the intermediate master rank. Needless to say, others would have an even more difficult time attaining it. In the next moment, just like Cold Memory anticipated, the Long family's first representative revealed that he was only a basic master alchemist. As for the Duan family's heirs, Duan Ying and Duan Qingfeng, they too were only basic master alchemists. Although they would be extremely talented geniuses in the eyes of the various superpowers, they failed to meet the minimum requirement for participation in this competition. When it was Yan Xiaoqian's turn, she proudly took out an insignia with 3 silver moons. Upon seeing this insignia, the spectating crowd gasped in shock. Advanced Master rank. She's actually an Advanced Master Alchemist. How is this possible? Our guild doesn't even have an Intermediate Master, yet she's actually an Advanced Master already. The various superpowers were filled with an indescribable sense of shock and envy at this scene. After all, the abilities an Advanced Master could exhibit were far greater than those of an Intermediate Master. Furthermore, an Advanced Master could produce Advanced Master potions, which would be extremely useful when exploring new maps in the future. However, shortly after Yan Xiaoqian flaunted her insignia, the Long family's Silk Moon also took out an insignia with 3 silver moons on it, shocking the spectating crowd once more. 2 Advanced Master Alchemists. How powerful is Dark Pursuit? Advanced Master Alchemists. Sure enough, everyone else is no match for these 2 women. The various superpowers were left breathless by this revelation. At the same time, they also started growing fearful of Dark Pursuit's foundations. Big Sis Silk really is amazing. With this, we at least have a 50% chance of winning. Burning Owl sighed in relief when he saw Silk Moon's alchemist insignia. The latest information he had received said that Yan Xiaoqian had been promoted into an Advanced Master Alchemist already while Silk Moon was still trying. Hence he had been considerably worried until this point. Now that Silk Moon had become an Advanced Master Alchemist as well, both the Long family and Duan family could be said to be on the same starting line. It's a pity that Wonder did not join Dark Pursuit. Otherwise, she would also have had a chance at becoming an Advanced Master Alchemist before this competition, and our chances of winning will be much greater. Cold Memory was relatively confident in her own guild's strength. However, as Silent Wonder was determined to stay in Zero Wing, Cold Memory couldn't do anything about it. This is already good enough. At least it is much better than our initial expectations, South Dream said, chuckling. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yushi caught up? Yan Xiaoqian reflexively took an extra glance at Silk Moon. She had never thought that Silk Moon would actually succeed in catching up with her. While everyone was wondering who between Yan Xiaoqian or Silk Moon would win this competition, Silent Wonder also took out an alchemist insignia with 3 silver moons on it from her bag. Impossible. She's an Advanced Master Alchemist too. Chapter 2363. Shocking the venue. Silence filled the competition venue as everyone stared at Silent Wonder's Triple Moon Alchemist insignia. They could all understand Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian becoming Advanced Master Alchemists, but none of them could fathom out Silent Wonder had become one as well. It wasn't easy to reach Advanced Master rank. Even now, very few of God's domain superpowers had successfully nurtured an Advanced Master Alchemist, yet Zero Wing had. It was utterly unbelievable. How is this possible? Cold Memory was shocked to see Silent Wonder's Advanced Master Alchemist insignia. How has she been promoted so quickly? Completing the requirements to become an Advanced Master Alchemist was easier said than done. Aside from talent, the rare resources required for research and experimentation were more than enough to give any superpower a huge headache. Dark Pursuit had only been able to supply these resources due to its control in the Moon God's world and access to precious alchemical resources. This was why Cold Memory was so confident in Dark Pursuit's ability to nurture Advanced Master Alchemists. Any other superpower would likely run out of materials before one of its alchemists could reach Advanced Master rank. Zero Wing had the research workshop, but that only provided guidelines to assist the guild's lifestyle players. In doing so, It would only slightly reduce the amount of materials one would need for their experiments. Moreover, Silent Wonder had been some time away from reaching advanced master rank during their last meeting. She hadn't progressed as far as Silk Moon and Zhou Xian, who had stood before the threshold to advanced master rank. Even as talented as Silent Wonder was, she should have needed another fortnight to complete her promotion, yet she had caught up with Silk Moon and Zhou Xian in less than a week. Cold memory couldn't imagine how Zero Wing had helped her accomplish the feat. Even Silk Moon and Zhou Xian, who stood beside Silent Wonder, were astonished. Little sis actually succeeded? Silk Moon could not help but glance at Shi Feng, who watched from the spectator stands with a soft smile. It seems Zero Wing is quite capable after all. Silk Moon knew better than anyone here how difficult it was to reach advanced master rank. One needed talent and resources. Anyone who said otherwise was either lying or a fool. An advanced master alchemist. This girl is quite impressive. Long Xianglong laughed when he saw the alchemist insignia in Silent Wonder's hand. Now he was even more determined to take the girl with him to the Western continent. Even without a superpower's support, Silent Wonder had become an advanced master alchemist. She proved to be frighteningly talented. Long Xianglong acknowledged that Zero Wing had played a massive role in his niece's success. But how could such a small guild compete with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's resources? When the Duan family's members saw that Silent Wonder was also an advanced master alchemist, they watched on with grim expressions. Although the final victor would decide the competition's outcome, the fact that the Long family had one more advanced master alchemist than they did gave their competitor an edge. Why are you so worried? She's merely an advanced master alchemist, Duan Han said as he eyed the people around him. So what if she's a talented alchemist? This competition won't be won on alchemy standards alone. The competition would determine which of the two families had a stronger heir. Even though this was an alchemy competition, it wasn't any ordinary battle between alchemists. High alchemy standards would provide an advantage, but combat power would also play a significant role. The participants would have to fight for the materials they needed. If they weren't strong enough in combat, they wouldn't secure enough materials, and without materials, how were they supposed to brew the required potion? With Duan Hanshan's comment, realization dawned on the other Duan family members. After all was said and done, this competition would rely on the strength of the competitors' backers. In this regard, Zero Wing was no match for Dark Pursuit. While everyone chatted amongst themselves, Hermit, who had inspected all 6 participants' insignias, spoke again. Since the remaining participants have met the minimum requirements, let's officially begin this competition. As you all know, the participants are required to produce meditation soul potions, an intermediate master potion. However, participants must earn their required materials, Hermit explained as he gestured to an approaching group of players. These players carried gigantic cages into the venue, all containing incredibly powerful beasts. He then turned to Silk Moon, Zhou Xian and Silent Wonder. You will face these level 100 wild beasts. You will earn more materials by defeating stronger monsters. Of the monsters we've prepared, the weakest is a lord. For defeating this monster you'll acquire 3 sets of materials. The next monster is a high lord and you'll earn 6 sets for defeating it. You will not be required to defeat the level 100 Great Lord, but if you survive against it for 10 minutes, you'll receive 10 sets of materials. If you survive for 10 minutes against the level 100 Grand Lord, you'll receive 20 sets of materials. However, you will only have one chance to challenge a monster, so choose wisely. As Hermit finished his explanation, a commotion erupted in the venue. The Azure Chamber of Commerce is so generous. It's captured so many level 100 wild beasts. Crap. Isn't this challenge a little too difficult? Not even level 100 Refinement Realm experts can defeat a level 100 Lord one-on-one, yet it's the weakest monster here. Do the participants even stand a chance? The various superpowers felt a cold chill when they saw Azure's level 100 wild beasts. Capturing wild beasts to tame as mounts was extremely difficult, especially at such a high level. Ordinary powers couldn't afford to spare the amount of manpower the task would require, yet Azure used these precious level 100 wild beasts to test its heir's strength. Even the various superpowers upper echelons thought this competition was absurdly difficult. At this stage of the game, level 100 peak experts would, at most, Be strong enough to challenge a level 100 High Lord. If they encountered a level 100 Great Lord alone, they'd have no choice but to flee. Even worse, lifestyle players had far less combat power than actual combat players. Whether or not Silk Moon and the others could fight a level 100 Lord was already questionable, not to mention a High Lord. The various superpowers members couldn't help but glance at Silent Wonder in pity. Of the 3 remaining participants, only Silent Wonder was under level 100. Other experts might be impressed that she had reached level 99, but it put her at an overwhelming disadvantage in this competition. Although there was only one level between level 99 and 100, the difference between the strength one could command at those levels was tremendous. A level 100 player would have far more control and flexibility than a level 99 player, and the difference between the basic attributes provided by equipment was just as drastic. I had never thought you'd become an advanced master alchemist before the competition as well. Had you joined Dark Pursuit, we might have been rivals in this competition. However, it seems you'll just be watching from the sidelines, Xianxia said, chuckling. If you have to assign blame, blame yourself for being so stubborn. Rather than accept Dark Pursuit's invitation, you chose to remain with a non-superpower like Zero Wing. Everyone has constantly compared Silent Wonder and Xianxia, assuming one of them would win this competition. However, their guilds were simply on different levels. Now only Silk Moon had a chance of giving Xianxia a run for her money. Silk Moon was powerful in every aspect and had been known as an unrivaled genius. Unfortunately, she had become quite strange after surviving an illness a few years ago. Now Xianxia didn't even think of Silk Moon as a competitor. Cold Memory and South Dream watched the 3 participants, frustrated. They had thought Silent Wonder had a significantly higher chance of winning now that she had become an advanced master alchemist, but even they would struggle in this competition, not to mention Silent Wonder. Pick a difficulty. Remember, you only have one opportunity. You won't get a second chance, Hermit told the 3 young women before him. This trial wasn't a simple test of strength. It would also test the participants' understanding of their strength. I choose the High Lord, Silk Moon said after giving the matter some thought. I choose the High Lord as well, Xianxia said without hesitation. Hearing Silk Moon and Xianxia's decision, Hermit nodded, satisfied. He then turned to Silent Wonder, curious about which beast the girl would choose. Although Silent Wonder hadn't yet reached level 100, she should have a chance against a level 100 Lord. If she could defeat it, she'd still have a chance at victory. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ooh, I wonder which difficulty Silent Wonder will choose? Is that necessary? She'll definitely challenge the Lord. That's her only hope. If she tries to face the High Lord, she'll likely die after a single hit. I guess you're right. She's talented, but it's a pity she only has Zero Wing's support. If she were backed by a superpower, even an ordinary one, she might have had a chance against Silk Moon and Xianxia. Quietly, the audience discussed Silent Wonder's situation, glancing at Sure Feng with mocking sneers. So what if Zero Wing were supported by Giant's Heart? In the end, Zero Wing's weakness would be exposed before them all. While everyone softly talked among themselves, Silent Wonder had made her decision and looked at Hermit, announcing, I choose the Grand Lord. Chapter 2364, Overwhelming Strength. A Grand Lord. She's lost her mind. That's a level 100 Grand Lord we're talking about. What arrogance. Has she never witnessed a level 100 Grand Lord's strength before? Even Domain Realm experts would have to flee from such a monster. When they heard Silent Wonder's decision, everyone felt that she had gone mad and was hopelessly optimistic. Why else would she make such a foolish, insane choice? Even the various superpowers expert teams had trouble with level 100 monsters at this stage of the game. No player could solo a level 100 Great Lord, much less a Grand Lord. Wonder is being too impulsive. Long Xianglong could only shake his head and sigh at his niece's decision. Although Hermit had presented 4 choices for the competition, as someone who had fought in level 100 neutral maps, he knew that there were really only 2 viable difficulties. The bit about surviving for 10 minutes was a joke. Level 100 peak experts wouldn't even survive more than 3 minutes against a level 100 Great Lord, much less against a Grand Lord. Moreover, Silent Wonder and the others were lifestyle players, who rarely engaged in combat. What is Wonder thinking? Even if she's trying to improve Zero Wing's prestige, does she really need to choose a Grand Lord to do it? Cold Memory muttered, baffled. Cold Memory understood the reason behind Silent Wonder's decision. Many of the spectators here lamented over the fact that Zero Wing, not a superpower, backed her. She must have found these opinions offensive and chose to challenge a Grand Lord to prove Zero Wing's strength. However, Cold Memory was confused that Silent Wonder had chosen the Grand Lord instead of the Great Lord. She had better chances against the Great Lord, even if they were still quite slim, than she had against a Grand Lord. Now she was simply making a fool of herself. Are you certain that you wish to challenge the Grand Lord, Wonder? Hermit, who was just as surprised by the girl's decision, asked for confirmation. Before the trial, Azure's Grand Elders had tested the challenge's viability. They had come to the conclusion that the highest difficulty challenge would be utterly impossible for current players. That's right. I choose to challenge a Grand Lord, Silent Wonder declared. Both Silk Moon and Yen Xiaoqian gave Silent Wonder strange looks. They had never thought that her choice was a serious one. It seems you'll never change, Wonder. It's a pity that you'll only find yourself in a dead end, Yen Xiaoqian said. She understood that Silent Wonder was attempting to save herself from a hopeless situation, but her opponent wasn't aware of how terrifying a level 100 Grand Lord really was. She, on the other hand, had encountered such a monster personally when she had accompanied her guild's main force on an expedition. All right. Since you three have chosen, we'll begin the competition according to the original order, Hermit said. He could see Silent Wonder's determination, so he didn't try to dissuade her. A group of players then brought a 4-meter-tall cage into the venue. As the cage opened, a 3-tailed flaming tiger burst forth. As it did, Azure's members activated the magic array they had set up earlier, trapping the flaming tiger within. Not only did this magic barrier prevent the flaming tiger from escaping, but it also suppressed the flaming tiger's recovery speed. It was considered a bonus to the challengers. 3-tailed flaming tiger. Wild Beast High Lord, level 100 HP 42000 000/42 000 The moment the flaming tiger emerged from its cage, every player in the venue felt an intense pressure bear down on them. Moreover, the temperature within the magic barrier rose due to the flaming tiger's body. It caused steam to rise, obscuring the space inside the barrier. However, Yen Xiaoqian, the competition's first challenger, was unfazed by the monster, and she slowly and steadily walked toward it. The instant Yen Xiaoqian entered the barrier, the flaming tiger roared and pounced, displaying such incredible speed that it made many of the Tier 2 experts in the venue nervous. The flaming tiger's movement speed was easily higher than that of a Tier 2 assassin. The flaming tiger swiped a paw at Yen Xiaoqian, and in response she lifted her staff, summoning a thick ice wall between her and the High Lord. Even when the flaming tiger struck the ice wall, it suffered hardly any damage. What powerful attributes! Is this the might of the Elven Light set? Everyone watched in astonishment as Yen Xiaoqian effortlessly blocked the flaming tiger's attack. They were all aware of how powerful a level 100 High Lord was. Even a level 100 Tier 2 metric tons would struggle to tank one. The task would usually require 2 MTs. Yen Xiaoqian, however, had stopped the flaming tiger's assault with a simple spell. What amazing Tier 2 silent casting! Yen Xiaoqian's ice wall even surprised Cold Memory. The young woman hadn't cast the ordinary Tier 1 ice wall. Rather, Yen Xiaoqian had cast the Tier 2 spell Enchanted Ice Wall, a magically enhanced version of the Tier 1 ice wall. Of course, due to how complex Tier 2 spells were, they were difficult to cast without a chant. Even if an elementalist succeeded to do so without a chant, their completion rate would suffer, reducing the spell's power in turn. And yet, despite casting the spell without a chant, Yen Xiaoqian's ice wall was strong enough to stop the flaming tiger. Her success was a testament to her high spell completion rate. Seeing this, Cold Memory couldn't help but feel inferior when it came to mental fortitude and control over mana. Seeing that its attack had failed, the flaming tiger circled the ice wall, but Yen Xiaoqian didn't give it the opportunity. She immediately summoned several more ice walls, surrounding the flame tiger. She then double-speed cast her Tier 2 spells, Earthen Spike and Frostwheel arrows. With nowhere to run, both attacks slammed into the flaming tiger, and damages of over -100,000 appeared above the High Lord's head, one after another. The flaming tiger tried to break through the ice walls, but Xianxia replaced the destroyed ice walls almost instantly. When the flaming tiger did manage to break free and attack Xianxia, she activated Blink and teleported to a safe distance. She would then create another line of ice walls, steadily draining the High Lord's HP. The young elementalist's performance stunned the various superpowers experts. They had never dreamed that a player could toy with a level 100 High Lord like this. The way she smoothly transitioned from spell to spell was particularly impressive. It almost looked like she gracefully danced across the battlefield as she attacked and evaded. Many of the peak experts felt their scalps tingle as they watched. In the end, Xianxia killed the three-tailed flaming tiger in less than 15 minutes. After Xianxia emerged from the barrier, it was Silk Moon's turn. She also had to face a three-tailed flaming tiger, but since she was a cursemancer, her attack power wasn't as high as Xianxia's, an elementalist. Even so, Silk Moon's performance stunned the crowd as well. During her battle with the flaming tiger, she cast a variety of spells to reduce the High Lord's mobility, reaction speed, strength, and agility. To everyone's surprise, Silk Moon was also a domain realm expert. Once she had weakened the flaming tiger, the cursemancer toyed with it as if she were playing with a kitten. Although Silk Moon's fight had lasted 5 minutes longer than Xianxia's, she had seemed far more relaxed than her opponent. After the battle, the spectators burst into a heated discussion. Shortly after Silk Moon's fight, Azure's members brought in a 10-meter-tall cage, which attracted everyone's attention immediately. Before they opened the cage, Azure's members strengthened the magic array, which became so powerful that the mana density around it increased slightly. As the cage opened, a 9-meter-tall bear walked onto the battlefield. It was covered in pitch-black fur and runes hovered around its body. When the crowd felt the bear's frightening aura, they felt chills crawl down their spines. Dark Moon Bear. Wild Beast, Grand Lord. Level 100 HP 210, 000, 000/210, 000, It's so strong. So this is a level 100 Grand Lord? How is this supposed to be a fair fight? That thing can likely kill peak MTs with a single slap. Few of these experts had ever seen a level 100 Grand Lord, and they couldn't help but gasp when they saw the Dark Moon Bear. If not for the magic array that trapped the wild beast, they might have fled from the venue. Wonder, it's your turn now, but it's not too late to give up, Hermit gently told Silent Wonder. No individual player could deal with a creature as strong as the Dark Moon Bear. Not only would players have to fight as a team to defeat this monstrosity, but they'd also have to rely on a magic array to suppress it. Trying to survive against the unsuppressed Dark Moon Bear for 10 minutes was utterly impossible for a level 99 Tier 2 player. However, Silent Wonder ignored Hermit's advice as she approached the magic barrier. She's insane. I wonder how many hits she'll last. Hits? You think she can last more than one? That's a level 100 Grand Lord we're talking about. My guild's chief MT underestimated a level 100 Grand Lord once, and he died after 2 hits. The team's healers didn't even have a chance to heal him. What can an elementalist like her possibly do? As everyone watched Silent Wonder walk toward the barrier, they were certain that she had some mental issues. As far as they were concerned, trying to fight such a powerful beast was suicidal. Guild leader Black Flame, will Miss Wonder really be all right against the Dark Moon Bear? White Autumn asked as he watched. He knew that Shurfeng was a Tier 3 player, but Silent Wonder wasn't. White Autumn wouldn't even be confident of lasting more than 10 minutes against the Grand Lord if he hadn't obtained the Sea God's blessing. Meanwhile, Silent Wonder's life aura wasn't particularly powerful, which proved that she only had an ordinary legacy. White Autumn doubted she'd even last 1 minute, much less 10. Relax. She knows what she's doing, Shurfeng said, chuckling. As soon as Shurfeng said that, Silent Wonder crossed the magic barrier. Almost simultaneously, the Dark Moon Bear charged at her, its frightening aura startling some of the Apex experts watching the fight. However, Silent Wonder held her composure. She simply removed her black cloak, revealing her crimson robes, and retrieved a resplendent staff from her bag, equipping it. As soon as she did, all of the mana within the barrier swarmed toward her as if she were this space's true queen. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Before the Dark Moon Bear could reach Silent Wonder, she lightly swung her staff. Answering her call, mana surged toward the tip of her staff, transforming into a flaming spear that shot toward the Grand Lord. The fire spear was so fast that not even the Dark Moon Bear had time to react. Boom! As the fiery weapon and the pitch-black bear collided, a flaming pillar enveloped the Dark Moon Bear, its flames so powerful that it shook the magic barrier. When the flames subsided, the Dark Moon Bear slid to an abrupt halt. Chapter 2365. Humanoid Monster. Although the Dark Moon Bear had simply halted its charge as a result of Silent Wonder's attack, the spectating crowd gaped in shock. As if time had stopped, silence fell over the competition venue. How is that possible? What did she do? Even Duan Hans Han, Long Xianglong and White Autumn were shocked, not to mention the various superpowers experts. Even a 100-man team of level 100 Tier 2 experts would be annihilated if they tried to challenge a level 100 Grand Lord without a magic array, yet Silent Wonder stood against such a beast alone. Despite being only level 99, Silent Wonder had stopped the Dark Moon Beat's charge with a single spell. It was unbelievable. Since when has Wonder been able to silent cast Tier 2 spells so proficiently? Cold Memory stared at the smoking Dark Moon Bear, confused. Although the power of Silent Wonder's spell had surprised Cold Memory, she was more surprised by the young elementalist's silent casting. When one cast a spell without chanting, they sacrificed a significant percentage of their spell completion rate. Achieving an 80% completion rate as Yen Xiaoqian had was already impressive, yet Silent Wonder had gone a step further and cast her spell with more than a 90% completion rate. Cold Memory knew this because the Tier 2 spell, Flame Spear, only generated a fire pillar on impact if the caster achieved a 90% completion rate or better. Not even Silk Moon, a domain realm expert, could accomplish the feat. However, of everyone in the venue, Silent Wonder was the most shocked to see this outcome. So, this is the power of a fragmented legendary weapon? Silent Wonder's heart pounded as she glanced at the brilliant silver in her hand. Shifeng had secretly passed her the weapon before she had walked onto the battlefield. She had nearly stumbled when she had seen the staff. A fragmented legendary weapon. The various superpowers constantly searched for such a weapon, and not even the Azure Chamber of Commerce had found one, yet Zero Wing had. She had seen many powerful epic weapons, but they weren't even in the same dimension as Brilliant Silver. Setting aside the staff's attributes, Brilliant Silver's passive skills made it far stronger than an epic weapon. Thanks to Soul Transition, she now possessed a Tier 3 soul, and as a result her spells were much easier to cast. With the bonus to her mana body as well, she had more control over mana than ever before. Before the spectators could recover from their daze, the Dark Moon Beat charged at Silent Wonder again, giving the elementalist no time to prepare. The Grand Lord was clearly furious, and when it was only 30 yards from Silent Wonder, it jumped into the air and launched a mana-filled swipe at the young woman. A translucent paw of mana formed in the air and many of the watching experts despaired. Not only was this paw incredibly fast, but it also covered a 20-yard radius. Dodging the attack would be utterly impossible. As the paw manifested, it contained enough power to rip apart space itself. If they were to receive such an attack, they'd be left without a body to bury. However, before the mana paw could land, Silent Wonder waved her staff and cast Enchanted Ice Wall, and a crystalline wall appeared before her immediately. Boom! The battlefield trembled for a moment after the Dark Moon Bear's attack struck the ice wall, shaking the venue with the sound of a massive explosion. Impossible! How high are her attributes? Is she a monster? Everyone was flabbergasted as they stared at the ice wall, which only bore a few minor cracks. When Silent Wonder had stopped the Dark Moon Bear's first charge, they had been able to chalk it up to her luck, assuming she had simply struck a weak spot. However, they had no excuses for her performance in stopping the Dark Moon Bear's mana paw attack with her enchanted ice wall. And yet they still couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was absurd to think a level 99 Tier 2 elementalist could have the basic attributes to rival a level 100 Grand Lord. Nobody would believe this story. I'm impossible. How are her basic attributes so high? Yen Xiaoqian, who watched from outside the barrier, couldn't believe her eyes. Xiaoqian's equipment definitely ranked among the very best in God's domain right now. Even the various superpowers domain realm monsters would likely be no match for her in this regard. However, she could only fight a level 100 High Lord at best, yet Silent Wonder stood her ground against a level 100 Grand Lord, 2 ranks higher than a High Lord. How could she possibly believe this was true? Even Cold Memory and South Dream were dumbfounded. Just what kind of guild is Zero Wing to enable a level 99 player to stand against a level 100 Grand Lord? Cold Memory and South Dream could not help but turn to look at Shifeng. They had never imagined that Zero Wing would have such a sturdy foundation. For a time they were overwhelmed with curiosity about the guild. Zero Wing was merely a pseudo-superpower. It had already been amazing that Zero Wing's ability to nurture lifestyle players rivaled Dark Pursuit. Now, it proved that it could procure better weapons and equipment than what Dark Pursuit could get their hands on. It was utterly unbelievable. Everyone already realized that Silent Wonder would win this competition. If Silent Wonder could block the Dark Moon Bear's attacks, surviving for 10 minutes would not be difficult. In other words, she would earn the 20 sets of materials, whereas Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian would only have 6 sets each. Zero Wing, is it? Meanwhile, Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong could not help but glance Shifeng's way. First, the man had received a friendly greeting from White Autumn, and now Silent Wonder put on an outstanding display. Regardless of their personal feelings, Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong had to take Shifeng seriously. Rather than focus on Zero Wing, the various superpowers were curious about Silent Wonder's equipment. Her equipment is definitely extraordinary if she can block a level 100 Grand Lord's attack at level 99. One wonder what kind of equipment she is wearing? The magic runes on her robe seem to match. I suspect she's wearing set equipment, but which set? If I could get my hands on a set like that, neither my Tier 3 promotion quest nor defeating field bosses would be a problem. For a time, the various superpowers experts watched Silent Wonder in envy. If they had such incredible set equipment, they could roam level 100 neutral maps without fear. Guild Leader Black Flame, may I know what set equipment Miss Wonder is using? White Autumn curiously asked. It has gathered so much of the ambient mana. Naturally, he shared the same thoughts as the various superpowers. Such a set equipment would make killing field bosses in level 100 neutral maps so much easier. The set might even help him during his Tier 3 promotion quest. The Crimson Sunset, a Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment, Shifeng answered honestly. A Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment? White Autumn's breathing became excited. He had never realized that Zero Wing was this powerful. He had heard of mana set equipment before. It was top-tier set equipment that was even more powerful than Dark Gold set equipment, but mana set equipment was painfully rare in God's domain. Moreover, the higher the mana set equipment's tier was, the rarer it would be. As far as he knew, none of the various superpowers had a single complete Tier 2 mana set equipment, yet Zero Wing had a complete advanced mana set equipment. If he could equip Giant's Heart's Peak experts with the Crimson Sunset, they'd have a better chance of completing their Tier 3 promotion quests as well. Vice Guild Leader White, are you interested in this Crimson Sunset? Shifeng asked. You jest, Guild Leader Black Flame. I doubt any player would turn away something like this, White Autumn said, a hint of envy and desire flashing in his eyes as he gazed at the Crimson Sunset Silent Wonder War. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. If you want one, Zero Wing has a few, Shifeng calmly stated. Zero Wing certainly needed the Crimson Sunsets, but it needed money more. Since a wealthy guild like Giant's Heart was willing to work with Zero Wing, Shifeng wouldn't mind selling the guild a few of the sets. Really? White Autumn was instantly excited about the prospect. How many sets can you sell? He had already witnessed the Crimson Sunset's effects. If he could get 2 or 3 sets for Giant's Heart, the guild's main force wouldn't have to worry about grinding in level 100 neutral maps, and he could challenge his Tier 3 promotion quest immediately. Zero Wing doesn't have many sets. Will 30 be enough? Shifeng asked after giving the matter some thought. Chapter 2366, Unexpected Harvest, 30 sets. White Autumn stared at Shifeng with wide eyes, utterly baffled. He would have already been impressed if Zero Wing could afford to part with 2 or 3 sets. After all, they were talking about advanced mana set equipment, which was far rarer and more valuable than level 95 dark gold set equipment. Yet Shifeng had just offered to sell him 30 crimson sunsets? That's right, 30 sets, Shifeng said, chuckling at White Autumn's dazed expression. Each crimson sunset will cost 15,000 gold and 10,000 magic crystals. What do you think, Vice Guild Leader White? Although the crimson sunset was extremely valuable, each set could at most fetch him around 30,000 to 40,000 gold. He wouldn't make any profit if he only sold a handful of sets, but selling 30 at once would be a huge windfall for Zero Wing. Of course, he could auction off the crimson sunsets. He'd definitely earn more money from each set if he did, but he didn't want too many powers to get their hands on the equipment, helping their experts complete their Tier 3 promotion quests much sooner. Ultimately, that wouldn't benefit Zero Wing. So, a total of 450,000 gold and 300,000 magic crystals? White Autumn realized what Shifeng implied. Can I buy 100 sets then? Even a fool could tell that Zero Wing had the ability to produce the Crimson Sunset. When White Autumn thought about the Crimson Sunset's potential mass production, he shuddered. Even if mass production wasn't possible, just being able to craft the sets was frightening. The fact that Zero Wing didn't want to share the Crimson Sunset with the various powers made this an excellent opportunity for him and Giant's Heart. If he could secure 100 Crimson Sunsets for Giant's Heart, not only could he satisfy his guild's experts who intended to challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests, but he could also arm the guild for exploring level 100 neutral maps. 100 sets? Shifeng rolled his eyes. Secretly, however, Giant's Heart's wealth shocked him. He said, "Producing the Crimson Sunsets is incredibly difficult and requires precious materials. At most I can sell up to 50 sets, but the price will be different for that many. A handful of Crimson Sunsets wouldn't be overly helpful to a guild, but dozens of sets would be a different story." This was especially true as players began to reach level 100. The benefits of several dozen Crimson Sunsets were unimaginable. "May I know how much you intend to charge?" White Autumn asked, smiling. The price change didn't surprise him in the least. "If you want 50 sets, it'll cost you a total of 900,000 gold and 600,000 magic crystals," Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. If he had 900,000 gold, he would have enough capital to develop his territory in the Cold Spring Canyon. Meanwhile, with the 600,000 magic crystals, he could forge a new batch of Crimson Sunsets. "All right, deal," White Autumn answered without hesitation. It might be a significant price increase, but 50 Crimson Sunsets would give Giant's Heart a massive edge over the other superpowers when it came to nurturing Tier 3 players and exploring level 100 neutral maps. White Autumn was confident these Crimson Sunsets would also help the guild compete with Pride Empire on land. White Autumn and Shifeng then signed an agreement. Even for a superpower, 900,000 gold and 600,000 magic crystals was a huge sum, and it would take White Autumn some time to collect the payment. Shifeng was quite satisfied. He hadn't expected his trip to the Dark Hills to net him so much gold and magic crystals. After this competition, he could turn his focus to the Cold Spring Canyon's development. Once he solidified his hold on the Cold Spring Canyon, Zero Wing wouldn't have to worry about contending with the various otherworld's invading powers. The guild's development speed might even reach new highs thanks to the canyon's resources. While Shifeng and White Autumn had been negotiating, Silent Wonder won the competition. Since the moment she had stepped onto the battlefield with the Dark Moon Bear, the competition's outcome had been decided. Zhou Xian was a talented alchemist, but she had only earned 6 sets of materials to work with. In the end, she had only produced 3 bottles of meditation soul. Silent Wonder, on the other hand, had produced 6 bottles before she had even used all 20 material sets. Even though Silent Wonder had won by a landslide, the other members of the Azure Chamber of Commerce couldn't believe the outcome. "Big Sis Jade, this is our chance. Now that Silent Wonder has won, the Long family has secured its rule over Azure. Naturally, Zero Wing will benefit from this," the blue-clad assassin beside Jade Bamboo said. "Although we can't become members of Azure, we can ally with Zero Wing and use Azure's channels through the guild. With how intense the competition in God's domain is becoming, I doubt Zero Wing would turn us away." The Azure Chamber of Commerce had access to both of the main continents and had even more resources on hand than some super guilds. The Eastern continent's various superpowers were particularly eager to obtain resources from the Eastern continent. Meanwhile, the other world's various powers were rapidly expanding on the main continent. If Zero Wing collaborated with their adventurer alliance, the alliance could provide additional security for the guild. It was a benefit that many first-rate guilds and pseudo-superpowers needed but failed to acquire. All right. After the competition, I'll report the outcome to the alliance master, Jade Bamboo said, nodding. Meanwhile, Xianxia stood on the competition grounds, still dazed. She had never dreamed that she would lose so miserably. I admit that I lost this time, Wonder, but you better not get complacent. Dark Pursuit's foundations are far more powerful than you can imagine. I will not lose the next competition between our families, Xianxia declared, glaring at Silent Wonder. She then turned and left. The competition for the rights to rule Azure had ended, but the shareholding families held this competition each year to determine the strength and potential of the younger generation. After all, the children held the future in their hands. Xianxia intended to use the next competition to recover from today's humiliation. Silent Wonder simply shook her head. She hadn't thought that Xianxia would view her as a rival. Wonder, the competition is over. From now on, our Long family will be responsible for leading Azure in God's domain, Long Xianglong said as he approached Silent Wonder. Everyone has witnessed your talents. Return to the Western continent with me. You'll only be able to grow by training at the Chamber's main headquarters. The Eastern continent's legacies can't compare to those on the Western continent, and strength is everything in God's domain. You don't have to worry about Zero Wing. I'll give Zero Wing a large-scale shop in Demonstone Town. Not only will the guild be able to earn a significant amount of resources through the shop, but it will also have access to plenty of treasure from the Western continent. Silent Wonder's display had certainly shocked Long Xianglong. He hadn't realized that his niece was so powerful. She was just as talented in combat as Xianxia. Although he had also been surprised to learn that Silk Moon had reached the domain realm, her health remained a problem. Unfortunately, Burning Owl couldn't lead the Long family to glory in the future alone. Hence, Silent Wonder's participation was absolutely necessary. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Your third uncle. Already told you. I've decided to stay in Zero Wing. Silent Wonder insisted. Enough nonsense. With your talents, it won't be long before you become one of the Chamber's vice guild leaders. You'll have no issues becoming a Grand Elder in the future either. You'll have a much better future with the Chamber than in a pseudo-superpower like Zero Wing, Long Xianglong argued. At this rate, you'll only ruin your prospects. As Silent Wonder tried to explain herself, everyone in the hall heard a deep voice. Elder Long, Silent Wonder is a genius, but I disagree that she'll ruin her future by staying in Zero Wing. Silence descended on the venue. No one had expected someone to be daring enough to refute Long Xianglong's statement, and everyone spun toward the speaker. The player that had interrupted the conversation between the Long family members was none other than Shifeng, who slowly approached Long Xianglong. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.